Oh, you know what I love?
Sports.
I love sports.
Sports.
When it comes to Texas A&M.
Where are you getting this information?
Let me tell you.
Welcome to TexAgs.
I need to talk a little sports with you, Ags. David Nuño here with TexAgs Radio. Billy Liucci here on TexAgs Radio. Olin Buchanan.
We will develop men, we will graduate players, and we will win championships on the field.
The best way for us to win is to do it together.
Do you realize everybody knows who you are right now?
Very thankful, 12th man. They've won us games.
Been in college baseball for a while now, but I've never experienced anything like 12th man.
That's about as pretty a throw-catch combo as there is.
I saw the safety roll, the slot fade. I knew where I needed to put the ball.
Our skill set worked great together. Like, he was more speed and I was more power, and then we put together, it was like thunder and lightning, you know.
You know, if I'm betting on anybody, it's the Aggies.
Good God Almighty, we are live here in Dallas, Texas. Welcome into TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers here in the Rollo Insurance Studio of SEC Media Days at the Omni Hotel. I am David Nuño. My partner to my right is Olin Buchanan. He's our Heisman Trophy voter and our columnist extraordinaire. And we have a loaded, fun show for you, as we always do here at SEC Media Days. OB, good morning, my friend.
Good morning. It's always a good morning when you're in Dallas, Texas. You know, this is my original hometown.
I love this town.
I was born in Rockwall, just right outside of Dallas, just right across Lake Ray Hubbard.
You know, I spent some of my formidable adult years right out of college in Dallas, and I did nothing but study and read and didn't party at all here in this great town.
That's impossible in this town. I don't believe it.
It's such a great town. But today is all about, I guess, the new SEC. Today is about the new A&M for me. I mean, A&M is going to be a talking point throughout for us, obviously. And also just getting ready. This is the official start of football season for us, really.
Yeah, well,
practice.
Like yes, it's kind of like the on-ramp.
Yeah.
You know, you're not on the highway yet, but you're on the ramp that's taking you there. And as far as the new SEC, look, every year you get older and you add some ugly weight. And the SEC added a little ugly weight.
You don't have to.
Yeah, well, that's you gotta work through that.
So the SEC should follow their macronutrients more precisely to not bring on bad weight.
Exactly.
Huh.
But you know, sometimes when you add that bad weight, you just gotta live with it.
You gotta live with it. Unfortunately, that is the case. By the way,
this is my life.
This is the Go Hour.
It is.
And you know it's presented by the Warehouse at CC Creation.
I know that.
But one thing I don't think you do know.
What is that?
Guests and callers that join us on this show are on the Boss Firearms Hotline.
Oh, that's new.
That is new. That's right. Our boy Adam Drake hooked us up.
Boss.
Yeah. Boss. Like a boss, bro.
Like a boss, like Bruce Springsteen.
Like Billy Liucci.
Yeah.
Like David Nuño on the interns.
You think Liucci is proficient in the usage of firearms?
I don't think he could see what he's shooting.
Yeah.
But I think he could shoot. Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh. I do. By the way, Boss Firearms, your local experts. They buy used guns, ammo, accessories. Go to bossfirearms.com to start earning money like a boss.
Okay.
Hey, so a couple different things. We're going to talk 90% football today, but I do want to start off for a few moments on some Aggies going to the next level.
Yeah.
Braden Montgomery, the 12th pick. I saw somebody.
He's the 12th man.
The 12th man, yeah. Highest pick ever for a Texas A&M baseball player.
Position player. Excuse me. Pitchers before.
Previously, 13th pick. Am I right about that, Richard? But he went back to college. Secondary draft. Gotcha. I don't know if you can hear Richard off camera.
I can't. No.
Okay. But you can go ahead and put it on, Richard, so the folks can hear you. Because I couldn't hear you very well.
Baseball expert.
Yeah, I guess Nick told me I could put on the headset. This is pretty crazy. You have an extra headset for Liucci, right? He's not gonna like putting on the one that I So I was told this morning that Billy Hodge was taken in the what back in the 1970s, the secondary draft, and he went 13th overall in that draft, and obviously came to Texas A&M. He was a first-round pick the following year, and then ultimately signed. The highest in the draft as we know it now, even though it's 20 rounds as opposed to 40 back in 2012, was Tyler Naquin went 12th or 15th overall.
So Here's Matthew Dawson on the rundown telling us the only Aggies come off the board quicker were Asa Lacy, 4th overall in 2020, and his cursor's over Jeff Granger, 5th in 1993, Barrett Luce, 6th in 2010, and Doug, is it Ray?
I think it's Rao.
Doug Rao, 1970.
Dodgers, right?
That 70 draft, I believe Doug Rao was also the secondary draft. He came to A&M after that, so he was drafted later. But yeah, he ultimately did sign with the Dodgers.
So we had that happen yesterday. Chris Cortez selected in the 2nd round by the Los Angeles Angels, 45th pick overall.
So happy for him.
I saw somebody tweet that who one of his teammates is going to be.
Who's that?
Christian Moore.
Oh yeah, that's right, because he was their 1st round pick.
Yeah. So and if you remember,
Tennessee second baseman.
He had some words for Cortez there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, so that happened. Gavin Lyons flips from Texas to Texas A&M, big time pitcher who could help out immediately from all reports. That's going to be great. Wyatt Sanford selected in the 2nd round of the MLB draft, and Ryan Prager not drafted yet.
Well, I wish the best for
whatever that
Ryan
is.
Prager, but selfishly, I'd love to see him pitch for the Aggies next year.
Yeah, whatever that is, I want for Ryan. He's such a good stand-up dude. But if it means coming back for another year of A&M baseball, let's go. If it means he gets selected today, a little bit later, and he's going to have a long MLB career, go do it. I just like that young man wherever he ends up. But have you heard any, Richard, any thoughts on where he could end up?
I mean, I haven't. It's not like the NFL draft where, a certain team's looking for a specific need. It becomes about signability and bonuses and slot value and stuff like that. Just because Ryan Prager wasn't drafted yesterday doesn't mean that he won't sign, or doesn't mean that he will come back to Texas A&M, stuff like that. Obviously, the further and further he slides, the odds increase, certainly. But I haven't heard anything about that. The draft continues today at 1 o'clock, 3rd round. 3rd round, the signing bonuses don't drop underneath 7 figures until about the 10th pick today. So there's a chance. We're also watching Sawyer Farr, a high school signee out of Saginaw Boswell, another shortstop.
Pioneers.
He's got are they Pioneers?
Boswell Pioneers.
I'll trust you. I learned when we went to Omaha the first time in 2022 that you and Ryan Broninger know a lot of high school mascots in the state of Texas for like 95% of the team, schools.
Yeah, maybe between the two of us. I would doubt that Ryan Prager is going to have to wait long to hear his name called today.
I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked.
Hey, all right, let's switch to football.
Yes, let's do, because that's why we're here.
Yeah, Greg Sankey is going to be speaking in about, I don't know, an hour and some change here at SEC Media Days. We did a little preview piece yesterday. And you had some thoughts of what direction you think he'll take it. To me, is really interesting to see what the next move is for the SEC. And that may not be this summer, right? We may not get any clarity on that. But if you read some of the reports out there that Florida State could be going to the Big 12, and I don't know how real that is at this moment. Who is it? There's 2 teams, right? They're considering the Big 12. It's Florida State and is it Clemson?
Well, those 2 are always linked together because they're both in the ACC and both football powers that don't like the way the money's distributed in the ACC. So I would assume.
But let's just play that game for a moment. Let's say Florida State and Clemson go to the Big 12 for sake of conversation. What is the ripple effect of that? Does the Big 10 then immediately scoop up Miami? Does the SEC then go pick up Virginia Tech? I don't know, or Virginia.
Well, if that's the case, then the SEC wins because Virginia Tech is much more valuable than Miami. I think you're overvaluing Miami. Private school that doesn't even have a stadium on campus and that, yes, had a period of about 2 decades of dominance, but for most of its history has been pretty mediocre, and doesn't have a really that strong a fan base. But yeah, I think if Clemson and Florida State found their way to the SEC, I think you'd see the Big Ten react immediately. I don't know if they react immediately to 2 teams going to the Big 12.
Yeah, but it would solidify the Big 12 as the 3rd conference.
Well, I mean, I think they'd be in the Big 12 for a little while.
So you don't think that's their staying power in what Brett your mark is doing there with the Big 12?
I mean, it's a nice third option,
right?
But there's just, I think the big time programs want to be in big time conferences, and the SEC and the Big 12, the Big 10 or the
SEC.
Those are the dominant conferences. So it's just like players.
But if that happens,
it makes the Big 12 much better, no doubt,
for at least a few years,
and they'll dominate the Big 12.
And let's just play that out then. Does the ACC start to crumble the way the Pac-12 has? Okay.
Yes. To me, the SEC's move should always be to court North Carolina. But if Clemson and Florida State left, because football's what's going to pay the money. Basketball's fine, but basketball leaves the tip.
Right.
Football picks up the tab. All right. So if Florida State and Clemson left for the Big 12, the first move from the SEC should be going hard after North Carolina and Virginia.
So interestingly, you have a couple of teams that joined the ACC, like SMU, right? Like Cal, which didn't make
Stanford,
which didn't make a lot of sense. Those teams are also could be in the exact same position, or at least the teams from the Pac-12 that they were in a year ago. Like, what do we do?
Yeah.
And that could happen. So I'm looking at some of these teams that would make the most sense for the SEC. And I guess Clemson doesn't really make sense because you already have the state, but you take them. But you take them, right? NC State.
Well, if you can't get North Carolina, see, at least then you get into the state of North Carolina. But North Carolina is the premier program in that state. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Pitt.
I don't think Pitt gives you a lot.
That's a Big Ten team to me if they go anywhere. Virginia Tech obviously would be very nice.
Right.
One of the two.
One of the two, preferably, I think, Virginia, because I think it's the bigger university.
But I do think it's every year since we've been working together, right around now is when noise starts happening.
You think?
Year one.
Or like 2 days from now?
Right. But year one, it was year one with me and you, right? Where Texas and Oklahoma was announced, right?
When that story broke.
And then, it's just, there's been ripple effects afterwards that we have seen in real time happen. And I always look at it as like, nah, this is not going to be they're not going to do anything this year. They're not going to do anything this year. And then they do.
Yeah. When the whole story broke about Texas and Oklahoma, you're talking about catching everybody by surprise.
Yeah.
I do think there will be further expansion in college football. And I actually believe that someday, and I don't know how long it's going to be, that Notre Dame's going to join the Big Ten.
Yeah, I do too.
I don't know when that day is going to be. And I do think that the SEC will eventually have probably 20 teams, maybe 24.
How close do you think that is from happening?
10 years, 5 years, whatever. Things happen so fast in college football. And I'm telling you, nothing surprises me. Nobody should be surprised at anything that happens in college sports anymore.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there'll be 20 teams in 5 years or whatever, but I just believe we're heading to an NFL model where you have the AFC and the NFC, and it's going to be close to that with the Big Ten. The Big Ten and the SEC are going to be, and then I guess whatever the leftovers will be around to be, fodder early in the playoffs.
If you want to be a part of the conversation this morning, you can do it multiple ways. You can call, probably best to text this week. I know there's some audio issues happening on the app. Hopefully we'll take care of that here soon. But my understanding, Nick, is that we are good to go when it comes to the YouTube page, correct?
Yeah, we're on the YouTube page. We're live on the Zone 1150 Roku app, and the website are the ones giving us fits. So we're working through it.
CW, all good?
They should be good to go. So
awesome.
We'll get it worked out.
Hey, I didn't get to go say what I like to say. Let's go behind the glass and say hi to Nick Savage. Nick, you're working your second SEC Media Day?
You should have just said, let's go one seat to my right. But yeah, second SEC Media Days. I'm glad Luke is here because we're trying to, take the production value up a little bit on everything we're doing. So a little bit more equipment to work with. But This is fun. It's kind of stressful for me. A lot of
Why are
people.
you stressed? You're good.
I don't like talking to people, David. You know this.
What? You are a very social person.
I don't think so.
I think you're like me when it comes to you pick and choose your social times.
Exactly.
Like
100%.
OB, have you ever faked a phone call to avoid a conversation?
Yes.
Okay. Nick, have you?
I don't think so.
What?
No, I've never done that.
You've never
never done that.
Oh, I've done it to you.
I might have to pull that out.
Oh, it's great.
Hey now.
979-693-1150, 979-693-1150. Can I check in? Am I allowed to check in with Cade back at the mothership?
Dude, he might be losing it. I don't know. He's stress central back there. So
I've been with him when things are. Why does it always happen when he's working?
I don't know. He's got a curse. It happens every time Cade's back at the mothership.
Yeah. All right, OB. So a couple things that I want to do throughout the hour. We're gonna have Andy Staples join us at 8:35 and get wide strokes of what's happening in college football. But I do kind of want to break down these teams that are at the podium today, and I'll just give everybody a reminder. LSU is at the podium today. We have South Carolina at the podium today. We have Ole Miss at the podium today, and Vandy at the podium. I feel bad when it comes to Vandy because I don't ever really talk about him. I like Clark Lee, by the way. I think he's a likable dude. But when it comes to Vandy, it's just like, oh yeah, and Vandy. There's no real conversation when it comes to them.
Yeah, well, rarely. I mean, there were some years way back when under James Franklin that they were actually pretty decent. But yeah, usually when you're talking about Vandy, it's because like Clark Lee a couple of years ago says, "Hey, we're going to be the best program in the country." And you're like, oh, "Okay, now let's ridicule them." 1 year they had a guy named they had a coach named Robbie Caldwell, and he was the talk of SEC media days because he went on and on. Bobby Johnson had quit the job as head coach like a month before the season started.
Yep.
And he did it purposely so Robbie Caldwell, his offensive line coach, would get the job. And then he came in and talked about how he worked on a turkey farm inseminating, turkeys.
I know.
Yeah, that's what his so he became a big joke. And I think Vandy went 2-10 that year.
Wow.
So then they were a big joke later. But yeah, it's Vandy. They're the nerd in the room that you're glad that brings up the conference's overall GPA.
Hey, do you mind if I do something personal for about 45 seconds?
Do it.
So as you know, you were driving with me yesterday on our way to Dallas. I got some heartbreaking news. For those from Houston that followed my career, I did a show with a gentleman named Ken Hoffman, who was a Houston Chronicle columnist. He was my co-host for many years with Raheel at 1560 The Game. He passed away yesterday suddenly, and you remind me of him in many ways because I've called you Larry David. He was very much a Larry David personality. He was very integral in my career, a dear friend. And yesterday was a weird day for me because obviously I'm trying to be focused for what we're doing here, but I was thinking about some great times. I was getting great text messages. So those who from Houston area who read Ken for 30 plus years on the Chronicle and Culture Map, just thoughts and prayers to his son, Andrew, his wife as well, the entire family, just a dear friend. And, the older we get, OB, these stories become a little bit more common.
The hardest part about getting older is the people you lose.
Yeah. It's so very sad for Ken. So anybody from Houston that you can just thoughts and prayers to my dear friend. I'm going to miss him. We'll hit a break here. When we come back, let's talk a little LSU.
Let's do it.
Let's talk a little, who else did we talk about? South Carolina, we could talk about. Ole Miss, we could talk about. And we just did Vandy, so we'll do that. Right now, though, if you're looking for a reason to get back to Aggie Land, you need to look at the Association of Former Students. They are hiring professionals in many different departments like fundraising, like marketing, you name it. They are looking for folks. They're the premier alumni association and the oldest organization serving A&M in support of that Aggie network. They play a part in every Aggie story from Howdy to Here, and you can be a part of that. Don't miss opportunities to help out with Howdy Socials, Aggie Ring Day, class reunions, Aggie Muster, and everything in between. Join a team that exemplifies those Aggie core values of excellence, integrity, leadership, loyalty, respect, selfless service, all in support of that worldwide Aggie network. So if you're interested in joining a team or sharing with someone that would be a great fit, please visit tx.ag/association jobs to apply and get more information on each position. It is the Association of Former Students. Welcome back in to
the Go Hour,
presented by
David Gardner's Jewelers,
the warehouse at CC Creations.
Warehouse for the Go Hour.
Yeah, the entire
We have
presentation.
so many sponsors.
It's great. We're NASCAR. We're good. This entire presentation is
Get NASCAR suits with all of our sponsors.
that would look weird, but
That'd be cool.
I mean, I'd let you wear it.
Yeah, hell yeah. I'd
Like the
wear it.
Riddler, you got like stuff all over you.
Like a NASCAR driver.
Okay, we could do that. Hey, by the way, this entire presentation is brought to you by your good friends at David Gardner's.
David Gardner's Jewelers, the gem of a guy.
And this right now is the Rollo Insurance Studio.
Jason Rollo and family.
Yeah, great family.
Yeah.
Great family. So I did want to talk LSU and Ole Miss with you, but before we do that, I wanted to bring something up. Are you familiar with Athlon?
Yeah.
Yeah. How familiar?
Well,
You might write for them every once in a while?
Yeah, I've written the A&M portion of their periodical for the last 10 years.
Yep. So I don't think you wrote this. Okay.
Okay.
But apparently they have their bowl predictions in the SEC.
No, I didn't get to do that.
And they have A&M playing Arizona in the Las Vegas Bowl. Now, selfishly, I think you wouldn't mind A&M going to the Las Vegas Bowl.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you this. I still say, even with all the uncertainty, that to aim higher.
Yes.
However, if things didn't work out, I would much prefer the Las Vegas Bowl to any other option that's not in the playoffs.
So
because I like Vegas. I'm a derelict. I have to admit it.
If I remember that the Las Vegas Bowl has only featured one other SEC team in its history.
Really?
I think Arkansas went years back. And then, sometimes they get the SEC. I think the last couple of years, the SEC's been in the mix for it. I'm looking it up as we speak. A Pac-12 conference team, which is how many teams?
Pac-12
versus either.
You mean the Pac-2?
The Pac-2. So a Pac-12 conference team versus either an SEC or Big Ten conference team is what it says.
Well, Arizona's a Big 12 team.
They're now a Big 12 team, yeah. So I'm wondering, because of the split, if they have to kind of change.
Well, I'm sure they do, yeah.
But I want bigger than that.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to aim higher. I'm just saying, if things don't work out, that would be the best option available for me. For me. Or maybe it wouldn't be the best option for me because I might lose some money. In fact, I probably would, but I'd still try.
I still think the Orange Bowl makes the most sense, OB.
But isn't the Orange Bowl going to be
part of the
somehow in the playoff?
Yeah.
See, I'm saying, if it's not in the playoff, then that would be the best option. Now, I like coming up here. I think my favorite bowl game is the Cotton Bowl. You're not treated better anywhere than the Cotton Bowl.
Is that still the case?
Yeah. As long as the guys in charge are still in charge, yeah. Conradi, Scotty Robinson, Rick Baker, even Charlie Fisk still involved. Yeah, then you're always going to be treated well.
Well, look, hopefully we're talking about a Florida Bowl. Oh, thank you, OB. You got my back. Hopefully we're talking about a Florida Bowl, a playoff bowl, or playoff berth, I should say. Hopefully, I do want a home game, but I'd rather have a higher seed, but I don't know how realistic that is to talk about in July, right? So in July, what is realistic talking about an A&M season? I think realistic, we're talking about an 8-4, 9-3-ish team.
Ask me on September 1st.
Yeah.
If they win that first game, I'm going to tell you anything's possible. Go ahead and shoot for an undefeated season and hope for it. If they lose, but lose competitively, I'm saying, hey, you know what? This is you could be in the playoff.
But if they lose that game, the Florida game becomes a must-win early in the season.
I think it is anyway. But yeah, you're right. You're right. That just adds even more magnitude.
Because what are the natives going to be doing if A&M starts off September 1-2? Would Arkansas be the next game? Arkansas would be a game later. So if they're 2-2 heading into Arkansas, I mean, then obviously we've seen A&M teams get better at that point, right? Mm-hmm. The year they went 8-4, it was chaos,
right?
And then they did lose the Arkansas game.
Yeah, and then they lost to Ole Miss,
and then they lost to Mississippi State. And then they turned it around.
Right. They beat Alabama, went on a roll, and then
Alabama, Missouri, Auburn, I believe, were the next
South
three.
Carolina.
Yeah. So
and then they choked against Ole Miss and got a really bad call going against LSU.
Yeah. All right, so we'll do this. We'll hit a break. I do want to talk LSU with you later, OB, Ole Miss, but Andy Staples is going to be joining us right now. Milliken Reserve time. They're a farm-to-table community in College Station. They got homes, they got trails, they got wide open spaces, and their mission is to build a healthy community around nature. They're committed to trading lightly on the land that Milliken Reserve can be found on, creating a sanctuary for family, for nature, and for community, dedicated to that conservation of a healthy community, respect for that native landscape and wildlife. We're talking 2,600 acres of open space and farms. You got 30 miles of trails and homes. They want to connect families to nature and to each other. They have an extensive network of trails throughout a wooded landscape that includes walking and equestrian paths, creeks, ponds, and gathering areas. They're committed to maintaining and restoring that natural habitat where you can find all the beautiful animals you can imagine: songbirds, rabbits, turtles, white-tailed deer, and homeowners at Milliken Reserve sharing a legacy of conservation, which means generation after generation, you're coming back to that pristine countryside place. To learn more about our good friends there at Milliken Reserve, go to millikenreserve.com. That is millikenreserve.com. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio Go Hour, presented by the Warehouse at CC Creations, OB, myself here in Dallas for SEC Media Days. Andy Staples with us here from On3. What's up, buddy?
What's going on, guys?
How you been?
Good. I am happy to be back at it. This is college football Christmas here. You got the first day of SEC Media Days. The video games dropping today if you got the early access, and I got to play it this weekend. So I'm a year into my dynasty mode.
Are you really?
Yeah, my ULM Warhawks did not have a great first year. But that's okay. General Booty threw for like 4,000 yards.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Andy, who you looking forward to hearing? What coach you looking forward to hearing? Because, it used to be you always look forward to Spurrier.
Yep.
And then Leach. And even that 1 year with Robbie Caldwell, I remember that. How crazy
Turkey insemination.
Yeah,
I learned more about turkey insemination on that day than I ever have in my entire life, before or since. It's Lane for me.
But is he going to be subdued?
Lane, but the thing is, even subdued Lane says stuff.
Right.
He can't help himself.
Is he and Eli Drinkwitz the only guys that seem to have a different kind of personality?
Well, Eli always comes in saying he doesn't want to make any news, and then he just says stuff that makes news anyway. So I think Eli can't help himself. Lane's a little bit the same way. Now, Lane's interesting because Lane has a persona online that is different from what you would think. So his persona online is very snarky, kind of very highly online, I guess is probably the best way to describe it, where he's a citizen of the internet and knows how to have fun on the internet, but he's very much an introvert person. And so this is not the kind of event that he's going to enjoy. Like he does not want to be in a suit in front of a bunch of people talking. Like that's not, he'd rather be designing ball plays, coaching, that sort of thing. So I do think, but the thing is, he's made so much hay just sort of saying what's on his mind and not filtering himself. I think he realizes that's his brand now, and it works for him. A lot of stuff he said about how the sport works now, in terms of NIL and paying players and all that. He's been right the whole way.
He has.
And he's predicted the whole way how things would work. And like, I talked to him, a few months ago, and I asked him, I said, does the change in the transfer rules change your strategy? Because initially Lane's strategy was if you could transfer one time, but then you had to sit out on your second transfer, I'm going to take as many transfers as I can with 4 years of eligibility or 3 years of eligibility left, and they're mine.
Right.
They're not leaving unless they go to the NFL or they're not playing well. Well, now that doesn't apply anymore. Now anybody can just transfer again. And so he has to adjust his strategy. So I'm curious to see, how does he adjust his recruiting strategy to deal with that?
Would it be a colossal failure if they do not make the playoffs this year, considering it's 12 and how much talent that they do have?
I do think so. I think they should make the playoff. I mean, they would have made it last year if there was a 12-team playoff. They are more talented this year than they were last year, particularly along the line of scrimmage. They get Walter Nolan, obviously, who you guys know very well. Princely Emmanuel was Florida's best edge rusher. They got him. Like Trey Amos from Alabama, he was kind of the third corner in last year at Alabama. He'll do well there this year. Offensive line, they got a couple transfers where they actually brought back a pretty good offensive line and then took some transfers to try to supplant those starters. So they got more competition in that position group. So this is as good in the trenches as we'll have seen Ole Miss in a long time. And then their skill talent is crazy good because like they're bringing Trey Harris here. I know they lost Quinshon Judkins, but I honestly, the way that offense works, I think Ulysses Bentley the fourth will be fine. I think whoever you run in that offense, because one, Jackson Dart can run. Two, if you got Trey Harris, and then let's say if Juice Wells is healthy, he could be one of the best receivers in the SEC or one of the best receivers in the country. And so you're going to have just terrified defensive coordinators looking at those two receivers going, uh-oh, what do we do? And then Jackson Dart is also a threat to run. So really, whoever they put their tailback, I think, is set up for success.
Okay. I could agree with all that. Now, I'm going to kind of change directions here. What coach that we're going to hear from this week would you say this is under the most pressure this season?
It's Sam Pittman and Billy Napier, easily. I mean, I think Pittman has to turn things around or he'll be done, and probably in short order. Because I think the way things work now, you if you're going to make a change, you probably have to do it quickly.
Yep.
And then Billy Napier, look, if he's under 500 again, I don't think he makes it.
Will they be?
There's a very good chance. I mean,
it's got a tough schedule.
So if you look at their schedule, in Florida's schedule, if we look at the preseason win totals of their opponents, they have 9 opponents that have a preseason win total in Vegas of more than 7. And then Kentucky's 6.5. So that's not even including them. And Kentucky's beaten Billy Napier twice. So Florida has got to be not just better, but a lot better, or it will not show in the record.
Where I know you're a Gator, right?
Yeah.
Where is Florida better from last year? Because Aggie's playing them in the third game.
They have a better offensive line. Graham Mertz has another year under his. Graham Mertz was good last year.
Yeah, he's really good.
I always thought Graham was very productive as long as he doesn't throw interceptions.
He was right, and he was very careful with the ball at Florida last year. Eugene Wilson III is one of their more dynamic receivers, and they've got a Montrell Johnson is the main back. They lost Trevor Etienne to Georgia, but they've got a freshman named Jaden Baugh that they like a lot. So they should be able to move the ball a little bit. Florida's question is defense. Like their offense actually at the end of last season was just fine. Their defense was awful. And so can that defense be better? Now, I just mentioned their best edge rushers at Ole Miss now. So it's really a case of they got a bunch of old guys as transfers to kind of fill out the secondary. Are they more willing tacklers than the guys they had last year in the secondary? Because if they are, then they have a chance to be better. But I'm not particularly optimistic that they are that much better roster-wise or any better roster-wise than they were last year.
Andy, follow me here. I use baseball, Aggie baseball, as an example for Aggie football. Is A&M the right coach at the right time in his career away from being that team that we always talk about, that knocking on the door?
Well, I've never understood why A&M couldn't get it together in the first place. Like it's a big mystery, and you guys obviously live it. But they have everything you could want. They have the passionate fan base. They have the resources. They have the location. Like A&M should have fallen ass backward into national championships at least 2 or 3 times over the past 60 years. It just hasn't happened. And so I don't know what it is. At this point, it's like maybe it's a curse. I have no clue. But yes, the right person can do it. Everything's there. A&M, Texas, Georgia, Florida, Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee. Those are all places where if you put the right person there, you can win huge.
Just hasn't happened.
Right. And it has at Alabama and it has at Georgia. And maybe Josh Heupel's that guy at Tennessee. We'll see. They're very excited, obviously. But it's happened at times at Florida with Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer, but it hasn't happened lately. It really just depends on who you get.
So why didn't it work with Jimbo, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, was Jimbo the same coach at Texas A&M that he was early at Florida State? Probably not.
Nope.
And the stubbornness, I think, was a huge factor. We talk about Nick Saban and what was the best quality of Nick Saban?
He was willing to adjust.
Yeah, his adaptability. And that's not something that Jimbo was willing to do. And so Jimbo had his moment where what he did worked, and then his moment passed and he didn't change. And like, I get it. You're very successful. You think, well, why would I change? This works, but you have to change.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. It's funny. All these guys that used to work for Nick Saban, most of them don't realize that was the best thing about Nick Saban.
I also thought that, and we've talked about this before, I thought Jimbo got complacent and lazy after he got the extension. And I'm talking about things like his coaching staff and support that he just didn't put in a lot of time to
there was a more careful eye could have been laid on the coaching staff and probably, could have evaluated a little harder.
Yeah.
And they didn't. And the offensive line development is a great example of that at Texas A&M. And there's no excuse for that offensive line to be as bad as it's been.
It's true.
No excuse. And you saw it. It's interesting because you saw at the end of Jimbo Fisher's tenure at Florida State as well. Like Rick Trickett had been a fabulous offensive line coach for a long, long time, but he'd sort of lost his fastball there at the end. But Jimbo stayed loyal, wouldn't change. And that position group just deteriorated. And like just now have Mike Norvell and Alex Atkins
Yeah.
gotten that offensive line good just now, and they left 8 years ago.
I have to acknowledge that the first 3 and maybe even 4 years, though, I think everybody at A&M and College Station felt good about Jimbo.
Yeah.
But it was just the last 2 years.
Well, 2020 was a mirage. That's the thing. If there had been a full season in 2020,
the A&M schedule would have been easier.
That's true. I just don't know, because would they make the play? And then if they make the playoff in 2020, does it change what happens last year? I don't know.
I don't think it does. I don't.
I don't. It felt like they'd reached a point, because I remember talking to people in Aggie land before last season, and it was very clear. Like, I don't care how much it costs. If this isn't working, a change is going to get made. And I was like, okay, I'll believe it because that's so much money.
Yeah.
But it was understandable. And when it happened, you're just like, well, what else were they going to do? You're just going to deal with this for like 3, 4. And it's interesting, because this is the conversation in Gainesville right now. Well, who else are you going to get? Well, what are you going to do? Like, if you're just banging your head against the same brick wall over and over, you have to do something different. Sure. And that's now, we don't know if Florida is. We'll find out this year. But if they are, they probably have to bite that same bullet, and it sucks. But I think A&M's in a better place now, because Mike Elko does seem like he understands the place.
Yep.
He understands the job. And let's be real, he did an incredible job at Duke.
Yeah, he did.
But so how hard is it to evaluate all teams in this new world, but especially A&M, who they've had the talent the whole time?
Yeah.
But offensive line, quarterbacks get hurt. They're so hard to evaluate.
I'm not sure it's just luck with A&M. I think the roster balance was a little off.
Yeah.
Because I think, like, you go back to the 22 class, it's crazy. Like, as great as it was on the defensive line, and you'd love to take good defensive linemen, that's what carried that class for the most part. Now, Wigman was in that class too, and Evan Stewart was in that, but for the most part, it was that D line. And it felt like they would just go get the highly rated guy regardless of position, instead of getting what they need. And so they'd have these situations where somebody got hurt and they don't have anybody who's really capable behind them.
Exactly right.
You saw that last year on the O-line. So I think less stars. And look, Nick Scorton's a great example of this. And I think, revisionist history will say, I was on him. Yeah, they thought he was a tweener coming out of high school. They weren't sure what they were going to do with him. But the funniest part is, who was the best defensive lineman maybe out of the class of 2022 in the country? It may have been Nick Scorton, the guy who was right there.
In your backyard.
Yeah.
All right, Andy, thank you so much for your time, buddy. Appreciate you as always. Great
Thanks,
seeing you.
guys.
Thank you. All right, we'll hit a break here. We'll do one final segment with the OB before we move on to the 9 o'clock hour. Right now, we're talking Heritage Films. That's Chance McClain's company. He's a great friend of mine, and his website is yourheritagefilm.com. They make documentary films for your family businesses, you name it. That's what they do. I did it with my dad, 93 years old, will be 94 here in a couple of weeks. And it's just such a cool thing to be able to watch his story on a video form with my kids, with my wife, with my brother's family. Just a great, great thing that we were able to do for my family. You can also do a Yearflix, which is a 20-minute video, Q&A style video that you can do with the youngers in your family. So we did it with Annalise, who's 13 years old now, and we did it when she was 12, and just kind of benchmark things that she's into, things that she loves to do. It's a great, cool thing to do, 20 minutes quick, and then you can do a follow-up in a couple of years, how much they've grown from that point. The website, yourheritagefilm.com. You can call them up, 713-893-8341. 713-893-8341 is Heritage Films. No, Dalton, I am not trying to grow the YouTube page by sabotaging the sound on TexAgs.com. I believe, Nick, we are back up and running there. Is that correct?
I don't know if we're back up and running exactly on TexAgs.com just yet, but we're getting the feed through our headset, which was a persistent problem. So we're working through it.
Hey, this is TexAgs Radio. I bet you knew that.
I knew that.
Yeah, this is the Go Hour. You also knew that
because I'm here.
Yeah, presented by the warehouse at CC.
We
Creations.
are live on TexAgs.com now. So
all right,
you should have sound if you prefer to watch it on there. Hopefully, I mean, Roku's all good, CW's all good.
The Zone.
The Zone.
We love the Zone.
The Zone.
Hey, so Andy Staples was a good conversation.
Always.
Yeah, he's good. He's good. And it is interesting that we have not gotten it right at A&M. Like the way he presented it, it's true because, and sometimes I wonder if it's been the leadership up top, complete leadership at the university.
Yeah.
And look, I have a lot of faith in President Welsh. I do. General Welsh. I have a lot of faith in him and everything that's going to happen under his watch, and then we'll see what happens with John Sharp and his leadership as that changes as well. But I feel I have a lot of what's the word I want to look for?
Anxiety?
I believe in Mike Elko. No, I have anxiety, but I believe in Mike Elko. And just like the offensive line, I need to see it.
Right.
But right now, I feel great about the direction of Aggie football.
I always say there are reasons to believe that it's going to be a better year, and you can point out to them, but until they become concrete, and not just reasons to believe, but reasons to know, you can only be cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
And yes, I believe that a lot of times in their history, A&M has been its own worst enemy. Firing coaches that are successful, not investing in their program like they do now, complacency.
Yep.
So if they can ever get everybody on the right page, and quite frankly, why I'm always optimistic is that it seems like now for the first time in history, A&M is willing to invest heavily in its program the way you have to win.
Look, I'm going to be very honest with you. And one of the, I know we get, I get close to a lot of these coaches, right? Because I interview them all the time. I'm friends with Garrett Chadwell. I love Joni. I think we have a great group of coaches leading all of our programs. I did believe in Jimbo until I didn't, right? There was a point.
Yeah, that point was against
Appalachian State, right? But I started having questions during the 8-4 year because of some of the obvious things, like why are quarterbacks hurt? Why does our offense? All the things that I had read leading into this job was like his offense is prehistoric, and I believed, well, it's ball control. He can run the ball well. As long as you have a good O-line, you're going to win. And I still believe that. Had they had a good O-line last year, I think we would have won more games. Agree?
Agree.
All right. But what Andy said was the inability to adapt and change eventually cost Jimbo his job. Mike Elko has answered all those questions that Jimbo, at least before the season starts, that Jimbo didn't see. We have a different O-line coach. We have a different offensive line personnel, right? Mm-hmm. The secondary is going to look different. There's a lot of the offense is going to be more creative. If you believe what Colin Klein did at Kansas State, he's going to bring that kind of mindset to A&M. It should look different. We thought the same thing, hopefully, with Bobby Petrino. What it ended up being was
Bobby didn't have any pull. In fact, I remember last year up in Nashville writing about the things that Jimbo said regarding the offense and how I thought it was kind of a red flag, and our own readers, attacked me. I usually like some things, but this is wrong and all this, and then it turned out to be exactly all the reservations were proven because he didn't let Bobby do anything but call his own plays.
Sure,
call Jimbo's plays.
Yep, and it was interesting because there'd be certain games, and I want to look ahead, then look past, but there were certain games I'm like, oh, Petrino's calling the plays. And then there were certain games, no, I think Jimbo's calling these plays because it was it felt different from not one day to the next.
Well, I think Bobby was calling the plays most of the time, but he was calling. Remember, Bobby said, hey, I had to learn the terminology and everything because we wouldn't change anything.
Yep.
So it was like I always said the Bobby Flay analogy. Hey, I'm going to hire Bobby Flay to cook dinner, but I'm going to tell him, here's the recipe, here's the ingredients, here's the utensils. You cannot stray from any of this. So it was just the same thing.
OB, I appreciate you, sir. Are you going to do interviews or are you hanging around? What are you doing?
I'm going to jump into the to the main room.
All right.
Sankey's going to be going off in just a minute.
Thank you, OB. When we come back, Trey Wallace, I believe, now we'll see because Sankey isn't about to start speaking from Outkick. We'll get him next on TexAgs Radio. All right, we are back here on TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio, here for SEC Media Days, Day 1. Trey Wallace of Outkick the Covers joining us here on the program. What's up, bro?
Man, just living the dream down here in Texas, kicking off the season, dude. I can't, it doesn't get any better than this. We're finally here.
So I'm going to alienate 97% of my audience. One thing we have in common,
okay,
we watch soccer.
Yes, absolutely.
The SEC wishes they had the passion that we saw yesterday in Miami, right?
That was awesome, dude. And look, I knew it was going to be a crapshoot down there when Colombia and Argentina were going to be playing together. I was like, okay, here we go. All right, this is going to be fantastic on the field. Let's get some craziness going. Did not expect it. Like I expected like some fights outside the stadium.
Yeah.
Did not expect it to be like people rushing towards Coachella trying to get in. It was nuts. And it reminded me of like what was it? It was Woodstock '99.
Yeah.
Army base. And everybody's trying to rush in. That's what it felt like. It was absolutely wild seeing it. The game was great, and I enjoyed it.
Why were people trying to climb in the air conditioning vents?
Dude, they were trying any way possible to get in that game.
You can't see from in there.
Right. Well, the problem, here's the other problem, too. They held it in Miami. That stadium only holds 60,000.
Yeah.
You could have held that somewhere else. 80,000.
Held it here.
Right. 80,000, 90,000. Hold it down the road if you want to. So that's where I think they screwed up. And then,
Outfield had 78,000, I believe it was, 80,000 for Brazil, Mexico, a friendly.
Right. And and that blew me away. They did it at Hard Rock. But I get it. The population and whatnot. So good game. I really wish Colombia would have won that game for some reason. I was just like, oh, okay, maybe try to finish it off. But hey, this is what it is. It was fun.
Hey, how different does it? It doesn't feel different to me, by the way. But I'm going to ask you, how different does this feel with the new additions?
I don't think it's really hit yet.
Yeah.
I think it will hit when the season starts. And you see that banner come across on ABC or ESPN. Okay, here's Oklahoma prime time, Texas prime time, Saturday night type of game in the SEC. I don't know how much it does here with Sark, and Venable speaking. The questions, it's going to be different for them compared to Big 12 media days and whatnot. So I think coming here, a lot of questions are going to be about Arch Manning. What's Arch been doing in the offseason? How's he doing? When they should be towards, okay, what's up with Quinn Ewers?
Yep.
Blah, blah, blah. I think with Oklahoma, I think it's how much respect do they get in the first year? Do they come in and are they picked 5th or 6th or 7th, something like that? Or are they stuck down there at 10, or 11? That's what's going to interest me. Because two really good football teams. To me, though, Texas is ready to play for a national championship. Oklahoma is not. So this is going to be interesting. And I think it's probably going to be, we see a lot of Texas and Oklahoma media members here. It's new for them too.
Yeah.
So, you're walking into this compared to Big 12. It's just a whole different animal.
You have to understand, my entire life, I've grown up hating the University of Texas and everything they stand for.
Yeah. Yeah.
My wife, and I know it's a great school. I get it. Right. My wife went there. But I like they like to do to us. I like to pick holes. Right. And I see that team, and I'm like, yes, they have, I think, a very manageable SEC schedule, if not easy, for SEC standards.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Agreed.
I know they get Michigan.
Okay. Out of conference, whatever.
Out of conference and not the same Michigan.
And they should beat Michigan by 10 points.
Right. But I also look at what they did last year with that awesome defensive line. And the offense was really good. And I'll give Sark his credit there. And
absolutely.
I look at all that, but I said, you know what? You don't win some of the games you won last year in the Big 12 in the SEC. You don't win the Houston game. You don't win the TCU game.
No.
So how does that translate in year one?
I think that's going to be the difficult nature of trying to find out, okay, is this offense going to work against some of these SEC defenses?
Mm-hmm.
Because they know what they're getting into. Go back and just watch the Alabama game from last year. And I think that it's how they're going to play Texas wide receivers. I think the running game would be fine for Texas. They got one of the top quarterbacks in the country.
Yep.
But to me, it's okay. What did Texas do last year against Alabama? They really just spread everything out. Xavier Worthy ran straight.
Yeah.
And they beat Alabama in the secondary. They're going to have a hard time doing that every single week.
Every week, yes.
Every week. It's so to me, you've got we've got 16 teams now. I had to ask myself that question. You've got 8 teams in the league that have a fantastic secondary. Let's just say that. So how much separation is Texas going to get? And to me, that's what stands out the most is, are you going to be able to run the football and at the same time find that space down the field? You got a great quarterback to do it. I just think it's going to be, it's a 2-loss season. And then you're, playing for a spot, in the playoffs. But I do think it's going to be a little bit of not a rude awakening, but I do think it's going to be something different. And I think, the way I look at it is, if you're a Texas fan, imagine playing in Tuscaloosa every weekend, or that type of opponent every weekend.
That's right.
And even the year before when they were playing in Austin. So that to me what stands out with Texas. Can they capitalize on things? We're going to find out. I think they're good enough to do it.
Not an original thought. Our Billy Liucci actually brought this up last week when we did our Luchador show, that it could come to a scenario. Again, there's a lot of questions about A&M, but it could come to a scenario where you got a 3-loss A&M team and a 2-loss Texas team playing, and one of those teams could be playing for a playoff, and potentially the other team could be eliminated from it.
Let me tell you something. My boss has asked me, okay, what games are we doing this year? Let's try to set out a schedule.
Sure.
I was like, okay, I'll give you the first 3 weeks of the season, and I'm going to give you the one in November.
You know which one you're going to be
at. The one in November. I do. I think something like that is possible. And I think that it's only going to magnify this rivalry. And when you get them back together, in the SEC, like it's different. Like Texas A&M is the guys that, hey, we've been here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Don't walk in here with that swag. Like we've been here. Come to Kyle Field. Let's play some football. And I think that it's crazy. Here's what it's crazy to think. I was writing about this last night, came out this morning. It's crazy to think 4 years ago, we were sitting in Hoover, Alabama, and all of a sudden the news breaks about Texas and Oklahoma. The fact that we got here 4 years later, we see what college football is now, all the realignment that's going on, the chaos that's upcoming with Florida State, Clemson, and others. I just feel like Texas and Oklahoma, we finally hit that spot. And if we can get to that game between the Aggies and the Longhorns, man, that's going to – we have Alabamas and Auburns. We got LSU Floridas. We got Tennessee, Alabamas, blah, blah, blah. Texas A&M, Texas. That's top 2 rivalry in the conference now.
Well, and I was going to say this. The Schloss to Texas thing, even though it's baseball, has added to the football game. It's added to the rivalry. It's like it's a big freaking – it was already a huge deal. It's a bigger deal now.
Brother, being in Omaha and covering that and being there in that final day, when Texas put that out there, they fired their coach, when we all knew the coach was fired a month ago.
Yep.
Like we knew he was out. They did that on purpose on that Monday.
Yes, they did.
To try to – I was going to use some language, try to mess with Texas A&M. It did hit a couple players' social medias that I know about. Questions were asked before the game to Schloss. And I just think that was the, if you're going to light a bomb, light a little firework to start Texas and Texas A&M in the SEC, they did it on that Monday in Omaha. And I think that the way that he left, I think that what he did that night in the press conference, I was there.
Yep.
And listening to that press conference, and I'm so sorry for getting the reporter's name.
Richard Zane.
And I think that I just think he's a bold-faced liar.
Yep.
And I good luck at Texas. Schloss is
no good luck, bad luck.
Right,
sorry,
right.
For my audience.
Schloss is I mean that in good luck.
Yeah, I know.
Good luck. Schloss is a good guy.
I like Schloss. He was good to me.
Handled the situation horribly, and I think he has what's coming for him.
Yeah.
And karma.
Yeah.
I love Tay-Tay. Karma is it's a bitch, right?
Yeah, it is. And I'll say this, like, I know this is BFF or whatever, right? CDC and him. But if my BFF did that,
yes,
released that news before the biggest game of my career,
right,
I'd be like, dude, I'm not going. Like, what the heck's wrong with you?
No, you screwed me. I'm not. The deal is off now. Sorry, I don't care how much
it
money
should have
you're
been off before, but
exactly. And then we get that classic game, with Tennessee and Texas A&M. And at that moment, as Tennessee was celebrating, and I was covering that and Vitello and everything, I look over at Texas A&M bench and I'm like, damn, these guys are going to have a rough 24 hours, because I knew what was coming.
Sure,
I knew that when they touched down in College Station, he was gone to Austin.
Yeah,
and so I was like, man. These kids, I know they're feeling it now with a loss, but man, I don't envy them going back to College Station.
I know you need to get to Sankey, but I got to ask you about A&M football. I'm in a weird spot because I've been optimistic leading into many years, right? And that's the life of an A&M fan.
With the talent, you should have been.
Yeah. But Andy Staples brought up something that I think we've said a few times on the show, but it kind of hit me a little bit harder today. As good as Jimbo was at recruiting, he did recruit certain areas.
Yes.
It wasn't a full team.
Right.
It's hard to evaluate college football today, right? But I feel like Elko's doing it the right way.
I feel like Elko is prioritizing the defensive lineman just as much as he's prioritizing your wide receiver. I think that, and from the folks that I've spoken with in College Station, I think that they appreciate that. I think that, and what I mean by that is, recruiting staffs and coaching staffs spend a lot of time going back and forth on who they want to bring in. And a lot of times your offensive playmakers are your defensive linemen, or the guys in the trenches, and you're going to spend the more time. They have spread it out and they've made guys priorities, meaning they're putting just as much time into some guys than there are in the others. And I think that's a big thing for the culture at Texas A&M. Jimbo came in and Jimbo wanted his offensive guys.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Jimbo didn't care what was going on the defensive side of the football. He had people to kind of handle that. Jimbo was worried about offense. I think with Elko, you're getting that flavor from both sides. I think that's going to pay off in the long run. Texas A&M is a marquee institution. I think within the SEC, it makes it even better. But at the same time, when I look at Texas A&M, I do feel like, okay, this is a 10-win football team. And
even this year, you think they can be?
I look at Texas A&M as a 10-win football team, kind of in general. This year, it could be 8 wins, could be 9 wins, something like that. Maybe, I think the quarterback play is going to help them.
Yep.
Compared to different schools in the SEC.
Colin Klein's offense.
Right, exactly. And we watched that Colin Klein offense. So now you look at it and say, okay, if you can establish a running game here, I know what you got out wide receivers. I know what you got at quarterback. Defensive side of the ball, interesting to me. Along the defensive line, something I'll be paying attention to. But I do think that this is a club that can cause headaches for other teams. If Texas A&M fans look at this season and say, okay, you know what? 8, 9 wins. Let's do that. First year under Elko. Okay. That's a positive standpoint. Don't worry about what Texas does this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just beat them.
Just right. If you're Texas A&M, beat them. But Texas is one of those teams that they were loaded in general. Didn't have a lot of stuff going on in the offseason, whatnot, with Jimbo and everything. If Texas A&M fans can just temper expectations and be like, okay, this is a 9-win football team. Let's get to a good bowl game. We're building towards the future. That's fantastic. Because they can cause problems. And if they cause problems, that leads me to the 10-win scenario.
Sure.
And in this SEC this year, I know all the talent. They're going to eat each other up.
Not that I expect you to know A&M's schedule, but that first month of the season where you have Florida, you have Notre Dame, you're on the road at Florida, I should say. You host Notre Dame, and you have the Arkansas game, which I don't think Arkansas is going to mean anything, and A&M's dominated that series, but still, neutral site game.
Never know.
That September month could dictate what that 8-4, 9-3 season look like.
Got to be Florida, I think.
Which is hard to do on the road.
I know it's hard to do. But we've seen teams do it in the past couple of years, especially under Napier. I think, to me, the biggest one is Riley Leonard in Notre Dame.
Yeah,
obviously, okay, that's the biggest one. But you can't overlook the Floridas and the Arkansas and whatnot going forward. And to me, you beat Notre Dame at home in what is going to be an electric, fantastic, I am so excited to be there type atmosphere. You're setting yourself up for the entire football season. And I think Florida and Arkansas, you're going to beat Arkansas. Okay, well, I'll just say that right now. And then the Florida game, okay, you're going on the road. It's the SEC, is what it is. You should beat Florida. I think it sets up for what you're trying to, not just for the entire season, Dave, for what Elko's trying to establish at Texas A&M. You let's come out of that month 3-1. You're good. You're good. You have, and be competitive. Be competitive. That's the other thing to me is don't let, some game you should win, you lose by 14 points. So I think they're going to be okay. I think that first month of the season, obviously for all teams, dictate what's going on for the rest of the year. But I do think that Texas A&M has the opportunity here, 3-1, 4-0 if they can go to Gainesville.
Yep.
And you get a Notre Dame team that comes in, got a new quarterback
who's been injured.
I watched him get his ankle snapped last year. So that's to me, and it's not like Notre Dame is getting a couple warm-up games before they come to Cal Station in front of 110,000 people at 7:00 at night.
Yeah.
They are walking into a hornet's nest. That's what I look forward to. So month of September is going to be a lot of fun. I think Texas A&M, we're going to find out a lot in those first 3 to 4 weeks.
Last thing for you, is Notre Dame a playoff team this year?
No.
I
think that.
So A&M should win that game at home. If you're
right. I mean, look, 12 teams. Okay, anything can happen. We can get a little crazy late in the season. Blah blah blah. But I got to see Riley Leonard in this offense in that first month before I want to say Notre Dame's a playoff team.
Yep.
I know what he can do. I've seen what he can do at Duke. Okay, that's fine. But I've seen him working out. Blah blah blah. Manning Passing Academy, everything like that. But let's see in the live game scenario, and again. Let's see in front of 110,000 fans. Let's see what that offense can do under Freeman. I think to me that's what stands out. So they could be, but as I look at it right now, I need them to prove it to me in the first month of the season.
Trey, you're the best, man. Thanks, man.
Man, this is great. A lot of stuff going on.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure we'll be getting up again.
Always love talking to you. Thank you very much. Trey Wallace, Outkick here on TexAgs.com. All right, we'll hit a break here. When we come back, I think we're going open segment. We might be doing around Aggie Land. I don't know. What are we doing? Yeah, we'll see. We're working on things. Right now, though, we're talking Caldwell Country Chevrolet. They constantly have great deals on their website. You go to their website, you'll see what they have posted, and that's obvious, right? You go to the website, but you'll get a feel for the pricing. You'll get a feel for the vehicles that they have on the lot, and then you make the trek out to Caldwell. Just drove by Caldwell the other day. It's great. They have all the cars you can imagine. You test drive them. You'll see the great customer service, the awesome staff that work there at Caldwell Country Chevrolet. And you're going to know you're going to get a great deal on your vehicle. You're going to get a great trade-in value on your personal vehicle that you're trading in, and you're going to get great customer service before, during, and after, right? They have complimentary pickup and delivery for their service, for all of their customer service participants. I said that in a weird way, but you know what I mean. If you have customer service needs, they're going to take care of you. It's not a far drive. We're talking 15 minutes, the very edge of Bryan to the beginnings of Caldwell. Short conversation away, but you'll see the difference when you step on the lot and do business with the great people there at Caldwell Country Chevrolet. Highway 21 in Caldwell. Online, CaldwellCountryChevrolet.com. Well, we're back. TexAgs Radio by myself here at SEC Media Days. That's all right. It's been a fun hour and change. We had Trey Wallace. We had Andy Staples. OB dropping some lines on here as well. I won't make a reference to what he said earlier. If you want to be a part of the conversation this morning, you can do it a couple different ways. You can call us. You can text us. If you call us, I don't know if we're going to get it. So if you text us, we'll definitely get it. And I do see some text messages that we probably need to get to at some point during the program. But let's do this. Let's go to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. It is time for Around Aggie Land. And I believe Matthew Dawson is there. Is that correct, Matthew Dawson?
I believe so. Can you hear me, David?
No,
yeah, awesome.
I can't hear you at all. By the way, Around Aggie Land brought to you by Normandy State Bank. Normandy State Bank, rock solid banking. The website is normandystatebank.com. All right, buddy. What do we have? Because I know we've got some Isaac Morton news. We got a lot of good stuff to talk about.
Oh, we got Isaac Morton news. I mean, literally just in the last couple minutes. And, Luke beat me to it on the thread. So good one, Luke. Good for you. Isaac Morton announced his return to Aggie Land for next year. I mean, he had a 2.87 ERA and 10 appearances for the Aggies. He certainly will be a big addition to the Texas A&M's pitching staff next year. So huge news, something that we were waiting on. So fantastic to hear that. I do want to talk about the Olympics. The Olympics are coming up in 2 weeks. And I know that there was a post, an article that there were 16 Aggies at the Olympics. I actually found a couple more. There's actually like 18. We got an archer in there. We got tennis players. Swim and dive, track and field, and Joni Taylor is also an assistant basketball coach for Texas A&M or for the women's basketball team. So congratulations to her and all the athletes that are going to be competing there as well. And then, of course, like we talked about earlier, like you mentioned, MLB draft, kind of in big news now. Brady Montgomery getting picked 12th overall to the Red Sox. Chris Cortez gets picked 45th overall to the Angels. And Wyatt Sanford, who was a prospect, got picked to the Pittsburgh Pirates, as well as Gavin Lyons, the right-handed pitcher prospect, flipped his commitment from Texas to Texas A&M as well. So a lot of moves for this baseball team in just the last 24 hours, David. I mean, this is a lot of news coming out here.
Dawson, I was not expecting to be talking as much baseball as we have on the first day of SEC Media Days, but first off, I mean, baseball's a hot topic still, right? And A&M's in the middle of all of it. And also, look, we got to celebrate these guys going to the next level. Brady Montgomery going number 12 overall. That is a huge accomplishment going to Boston. He looked so happy yesterday in some of the social media clips that I was able to see. So I'm very excited about that. Anything else, Matthew?
Well, I did want to say that earlier we were listening to Nick Saban talk, and he said that they didn't let him access where he was trying to go because he didn't have a credential. So apparently Nick Saban, because he's retired, now he needs a credential to get around SEC Media Days. Isn't that kind of crazy? Like
that is weird.
Who's not letting him in? Who's not letting him into the building without a credential?
Well, there are certain people that, you don't. Billy Liucci doesn't need a credential. Nick Saban doesn't need a credential. Nick Savage doesn't need a credential. There's certain people you don't expect to have it. But I did want to say this. It's interesting, my love-hate with certain people in college sports, right? I have a love-hate thing with Nick Saban. I have a love-hate thing with Lane Kiffin. There's certain things, like I always feel like I'm learning from Nick Saban, right? Even though the whole Jimbo fiasco and sometimes how he uses the media to his advantage and whatnot, I do think he speaks facts. I do think he spits out truths. There's a very likable quality to the way he leads and to what he says about the current state of college football. Those are all true. Lane Kiffin on the other side, when he's not talking about Texas A&M, I like him. And we're about to find out here over the next couple of years if it was an A&M thing, because I know he's had some comments about A&M and our traditions and whatnot, or if it was just a Jimbo thing. And most people think it was just a Jimbo thing. But I'm interested in seeing what direction that goes with him. But Lane Kiffin, I think he is now look, how many huge games has he won in his career? Be honest, you look through it. Like, that's why this season is going to be enormous for him, right? It is going to be a huge year for how we see him in the pecking order of college football coaches, because they are expected to make the college football playoffs. I asked Andy Staples, would it be a failure if Ole Miss does not make the college football playoffs this year? And he said yes, because not only is it expanded, but they've got the roster, they've got the talent on the defensive line, they've got an offense that works. As for Lane Kiffin and his personalities, like, he's funny on social. I just don't like when he talks about A&M, but he is absolutely somebody that I gravitate to some of his comments. Different way to Nick Saban. Brian Kelly, I got a lot of respect for. He's going to be speaking today. I don't dislike Brian Kelly, but I don't also he's not like a go-to guy for me. I think he says some interesting things. Speaking of LSU, our intern staff made a great spreadsheet for us here for SEC Media Days. I'm just going to give you a couple things when it comes to LSU football this year, because they will be hitting the podium here in a couple hours. But key additions to the team: Dominic McKinley, C.J. Daniels at wide receiver, Trey Green at tight end. They lost Jaden Daniels, obviously, to the NFL. And that is the big storyline when it comes to what's going to happen to their offense. They were the best offense in the country. They lose Jaden Daniels. They also lose their offensive coordinator, and Mike Denbrook, who goes to Notre Dame. And A&M is going to face Notre Dame, obviously, in game 1 with Riley Leonard. So they lose Jaden Daniels. They lose Malik Neighbors, also a first-round pick, number 6 overall to the Giants. And they lose Brian Thomas Jr., 23rd to the Jags. 3 first-round picks, all gone off that offense. So when it comes to talking about LSU, how can people expect that offense to be the same offense? And that same LSU team that last year went 10-3, could have lost to A&M if it wasn't for that fourth quarter, but that went 10-3. Like, how will they be better? Their defense might be a little better. Their offense cannot be as good. I'm sorry, I'm going to tell you right now, and this is not a hot sports take, this is just a fact. The offense will not be as good without your offensive coordinator, without 3 first-round picks. It may be good. And I will give the benefit of the doubt to LSU because of the brand that they are, because of the ability to recruit the way they have. But I'm just sorry. They're not going to average 43 points a game this year, right? They're not going to win by a scoring margin of almost 14 points a game. Like, that's just not going to happen. You go down their schedule, though. I'm speaking about LSU. That first game against USC, I'm sorry. I don't believe in USC. I believe more in the new LSU without their guys, and I believe in dry fit, right? I just don't believe in them. So I think they'll win that first game, and I believe that game is in Vegas. I believe they'll beat Nicholls State. They'll go to South Carolina. That'll probably be a night game. I still think LSU wins that game. Then they get UCLA. They'll be 4-0. They'll get South Alabama. They'll be 5-0. I believe they'll be 5-0 heading into October with the bye week, and then they get the Ole Miss game. But I say that maybe they're 4-1 at that point. But I think they lose at Ole Miss. I think they beat Arkansas. I think they lose to A&M. I think they lose to Bama. That's 3 losses there. I think they beat Florida. I think they. So yeah, they are. The A&M game to me will determine if they're a 9-3 team or a 10-2 team, and that 10-2 record again will be more because of the schedule. Because I mean, they end with Oklahoma. And they'll host Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's going to have a rough year. I just can't see them doing great. By the way, Harold Perkins will be at the podium later on today too. I'll be interested to see how they're going to use him, because that's one guy who had such a breakout freshman year. They couldn't figure out where to use him last year, and they still don't know the direction. So I'll be interested to hear what he has to say. All right, we'll hit a break here. When we come back on TexAgs Radio here from SEC Media Days Day 1, I believe Chris Lowe of ESPN will be joining us. He should be here. Oh, he's right there. We'll talk to Chris here in a moment. Right now, though, we're talking Rollo Insurance. They are the official insurance provider of TexAgs Radio. The difference is real. Those guys are great. Go say hi to Jason Jackson, the whole crew, Keith, Morgan, you name it. Morgan actually texted me this past weekend, and we're going to link up here soon. But they've got offices all over the place. They got North Texas here in the Metroplex. They got an office. They got South Texas in Houston. They've got East Texas, Tyler. They got Central Texas, Austin and San Antonio. West Texas, everything west of I-35, including the Panhandle. They are the place to go. Homeowners, that's your insurance of choice. Farmers and ranch and hobby farmers, they're your insurance of choice. By the way, they put God, family, and country in the first thing that they do. They are so awesome. And I'm telling you, they are the place to go when it comes to getting your insurance needs. What you need to do is go to rolloinsurance.com. That website is rolloinsurance.com, 888-44-ROLLO. As a reminder, their headquarters is on Highway 6 in College Station. It's Rollo Insurance. When we come back, Chris Lowe of ESPN. All right, we are back here on TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Let's talk to Chris Lowe of ESPN here, who is always so gracious and kind to join us here on the show. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. It's good to be with you guys as usual.
Hey, so you were telling me something at the break, and I just kind of want to follow up. You had a great combo this offseason with Mike Elko, and what are your big takeaways from what you've learned about Mike?
Well, Mike, this is the thing, and we talked about this. Mike has sort of run the gamut in college coaching. He's been at places that are academically oriented, like Notre Dame, like Duke, and yet he's coached at places. He comes to Texas A&M, and Notre Dame obviously is a football-centric school, but also an academically elite school. But you look at his resume; he's sort of seen all sides of it, and I think he understands what recruiting is in this era, and he's had to recruit different types of people, different types of players who come from different backgrounds, academically, athletically. And I think that's going to help him because he understands sort of and some guys will spend their whole career in the Big 12 and the SEC or the ACC and the Big 12. Mike's coached at a lot of different places. And I think that's, and again, having been at A&M previously and coached at A&M and knowing the landscape. And I think that will really help him as he dives into what's, I don't think this is an easy job. There were holes, and I think he did his best to go out and replace guys. But he also told me that when you looked at, and there was all these numbers when he came, and this guy's leaving. He said the reality is when you step back and look at it, he said they kept most of the guys they really wanted to keep. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that doesn't get out there publicly. You see the sheer numbers of guys leaving a program when there's a coach transition. He said, for the most part, there were a few players, but we kept a lot more than we lost that we wanted to keep.
So one of the things, if you would have listened to our show in 21, 22, 23, and we were talking about some of the holes in A&M, the roster holes, the play calling, everything since that point, I think Mike Elko gets a check mark because it looks like he's addressed the offensive line. Obviously, different personnel, different offensive line coach. The secondary is going to look different. The way he's recruiting, the way he talks to the Texas high school football coach, it's like they gave him the playbook. This is what's wrong, and he's fixing it. Does it seem that way to you?
Well, yeah, he absolutely has integrated himself back in with the Texas high school coaches. And that was a big criticism of Jimbo, that he just didn't, for whatever reason, I don't know that it was his strategy, but, he just didn't do it, didn't do a good enough job.
Yep.
And I think Mike has taken that criticism or advice, as you say, and, I'm going to really go overboard and do as much as I can to make sure I get to know these guys, key guys, and get out there and be seen, whether it's conventions or clinics or whatever.
Right.
He's done a lot of that. And I think, in that state, you can make a living. Now, I think you always got to sort of supplement. And maybe if you want to criticize Jimbo, he might have gone outside Texas too much and tried to bring in guys that were highly recruited guys on lists. Mike is, I think, always going to, with his background and having coached at different places, he's always going to go and try to get good football players. But I think he's always going to start in Texas.
Give me the national perspective of Connor Wigman. And before you go, I look at him as a guy that his body of work it's small, but it's bigger than some of the others that are getting a lot of love, more than Nico, more than Garrett Nussmeier. When you look at Connor, why is he kind of still a TBD? And I understand the why, I guess, but give me a little more.
Maybe because he's played now and under different guys, different coordinators, different systems. People are sort of waiting to see, how he plays and how he operates in Colin's system. I think he's with a good guy, because you look at Colin. Colin could have had the Notre Dame offensive coordinator job a few years ago and stay put. He's a guy that a lot of coaches around the country. I know Nick Saban was interested in him when they hired Tommy Rees. So there are a lot of big time programs that wanted to bring Colin Klein in as OC. So I think number one, having him he's gonna I think develop and get to that point maybe quicker than he would. Colin played the position. He played for a guy like Bill Snyder. He understands discipline, accountability, and the little things, the details. And I think you talked to Chris Kleiman, who was his previous boss. It was the same way there. And you look at some of the guys that he's developed that weren't like 5-star guys coming in, and he's done a good job of that. So I just think people want to see how he fits. how he plays in this new system. And he's not been a guy who's put up huge numbers, but I think I remember watching him practice a few years ago. I went in preseason to watch him practice. And this is back when he was not, he'd not been the starter, and watching him throw. And he was actually making throws at that point that I thought were better. And he also missed some stuff. I remember talking to Jimbo about it, and I think Jimbo felt like he was the most talented of the guys he had, but maybe for rightfully or wrongfully was not ready to play, at that point.
Sure.
But he's got a lot of arm talent. He's a tough kid. Watching the guys around him on the team, they seem to rally around him. And I think the big thing, and as a quarterback, does everybody around him believe in him truly? Are they all in? And I think that's not something you really know until you get into the season. But having to doing this now for another year and being a guy, I think makes that second step sometimes is the biggest. I think, talking to Mike about him, Mike certainly believes in him. And it's not like they feel like that, he's just a guy that's going to be a manager, and other guys. I mean, they feel like he can win games for him. But also, I don't think they're going to put so much on his shoulders where he feels like every game he's got to go out there and be that guy.
Chris, what do you think about Jimbo? Does he coach again? Is it soon? Is it does he try his hand in TV? What do you think happens with Jimbo?
I know he wants to coach again. Having talked to him not too long ago, he wants to coach, but I don't think he's going to just go somewhere to coach. I think he'll be picky. Does he go somewhere in the NFL as a coordinator? Maybe. I think he would rather coach in college. He's had enough success that I think someone's going to take a shot. It wasn't what he or anybody in him wanted the last few years. Was he too stubborn at times? Yeah, he probably was. But, you go back to 20, the COVID year, they were right there. They really should have probably been in the playoff. Mm-hmm. And you wonder how his tenures looked at had he made the playoff. Maybe no different. Maybe they still make the decision to can him. But I do think when you get to the playoff, there's a little bit more equity there.
Sure.
And they had a good football team. They just didn't play well enough. And if you're the AD or you're a money guy and you looked at what they did the last few years, on paper he recruited well, but a lot of those classes just disappeared. Guys left, guys that, just didn't fit in. Guys were, let's be honest, bad dudes and got in trouble. It just didn't transition onto the field. And I think Bjork obviously made the decision, or that regime made the decision. They clearly just felt like they were not going to get where they wanted to get quickly enough if they held on to him. And now it's sort of Mike's turn to come in and see if they can do that. I do think A&M will be better than most people think they are.
What does that mean to you?
Well, I think they're going to be competitive, a lot more competitive in games. That's the thing. Jimbo lost some games. You think of last year, they lost a bunch of games in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a ton of games.
Ole Miss, LSU,
Tennessee.
Yep.
Even Alabama. I was at the Alabama game. Alabama scores. It hits them with a couple big plays in that game. So they were right there. They just couldn't finish games. So can he better finish football games where they're in? I think they will be competitive. Here's the thing, though. You look at Auburn. I use Auburn as an example last year. Auburn was not a very good football team, but it took a miracle for Alabama to beat them.
Yep.
They run for 230 yards against Georgia. Georgia hits two big-time passes to Brock Bowers to score late in that game. So they're right there with the two best teams in the conference last year. Can't finish the game. Think if they win those games, how their season is looked upon as if. So my point is, the margin in this league, and it only steps up with OU and Texas, is about a centimeter from being a 9-win football team and maybe a 6-win football team.
Well, for me, and my audience is going to say I'm a broken record, it comes down to the offensive line. If Jimbo had a good offensive line, they win more games. If Mike Elko has a good offensive line, this team is going to be a 9-3, 10-2 type team.
And I don't know why they weren't any better in the offensive line. They had good players.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd go watch them practice. I had chances to watch them practice, and from the eye test and watching those guys move and their footwork. I mean, massive guys who seemingly could move, but you're right. They did not play well up front. And I don't think it was a talent deal. I mean, I don't think it was because they just didn't have the guys. There were some guys that were hurt at times. The center was hurt, and maybe they didn't have the kind of depth they needed.
I think there was a disconnect with Adagio.
And I was going to say, I think with sometimes it's just the coach, sometimes it's the system, but for whatever reason, Jimbo, whoever you want to point to on the offensive staff did not get as much out of that group as they should have.
Let me ask you about the thin margin you were speaking of, because I brought up the point earlier. Texas and OU moving into the SEC. As good as Texas is talent-wise, those thin margins against Houston and TCU and some of the games that we saw last year, that's a different game in the SEC.
Well, it's the daily grind, and again, I spent time with Sark and Venables this offseason, and Sark's seen it up close.
Mm-hmm.
He sought it out at Alabama in 19 and 20, and he says, listen, he said, you look at that LSU team in 19, there was a great football team. And you look at Alabama in 20. Now both those teams went unbeaten. If you're going to build a team in this league to win a championship, that's what you got to look like. You got to have depth. You got to go to practice and go with the defensive lineman in one corner of the practice field in the preseason. None of them have their names on the jersey, just got numbers. You don't know who's first team, who's second team. And when you watch them move and watch them work, you can't really tell a difference. That's where you got to get to. And that's where Alabama was. And I'm not saying they're not there anymore. Sort of that's where Georgia is. Is Texas there? I guess we're going to find out. But that's, to your point, that's where you find out, because you're playing somebody that can beat you pretty much every week. Maybe not every week, but you're having those 3, 4, 5 game stretches where you're playing a conference game, some on the road, some at home. Maybe you're missing your right tackle. Maybe your best corner can't play, or he's only 70%. You find out in late October and November when the grind starts to catch up with you. Maybe you're missing some guys. Can you hold up in the SEC? And I think that's the biggest difference to your question from, say, the ACC or the Big 12. And we're going to find out. Both those teams, OU and Texas.
Let me ask you one final thing. Alabama, I really like Kalen DeBoer. I do. But I still don't know how that translates in year one of the SEC. I think they're going to be really good. What do you think?
Well, I do too. And I think Kalen's it takes a special dude to walk in behind a Nick Saban, especially if you got a good job. And heck, they were in the national championship game last year. It's not like he's sort of working his way up through, and he wasn't, he didn't blink. He was ready to come in. He's clearly recruiting at a high level right now, as well or better than anybody in the country. I think he's got a quarterback that will blossom, Jalen Milroe. And and here's the other thing we don't talk about enough, and I'm guilty of this. Who do you have behind your first team quarterback? They got a kid, Ty Simpson, who was highly recruited. For whatever reason, under the previous regime, did not play with a lot of confidence. He played lights out this spring. And they really feel like if something would have happened to Milroe, he didn't play well, that he's ready to go. And so often you see that. You're only as good sometimes as your second team quarterback, especially in the SEC. Guys get knocked out. Guys can't play. They get hurt. Maybe they go into a little bit of a funk. And you always want to have that guy. It's hard, man. In this era to have a second team guy who's really good, because they move on. And a lot of people thought Ty Simpson. So I think they're going to be pretty good. Their schedule is very difficult. Very difficult. You look at schedules, people always ask me about how's this team going to do. I always look at schedules. In fact, I got a column coming out here in a couple of weeks I do every year on scheduling across college football. Easiest, hardest, toughest non-conference, cushiest, toughest 3-game stretches, toughest close of the season. You look at OU and Texas. I don't know what Brent Venables did to the schedule makers in the SEC, but Texas's schedule is far easier. Far easier than Oklahoma's.
Far.
And now I'll admit this, schedules sometimes in July look different than they do in November.
Absolutely.
Right. But you just look at it on paper, who they have to play, where they have to go. That stretch from I think there's an October to November stretch for Oklahoma is brutal. Texas right now, as we sit here in July, doesn't face that kind of stretch. Now they got to play Michigan out of conference, but I'm talking about within the conference, Texas made out a lot better than OU.
I appreciate your time, sir. Thank you so much. By the way, you talk about backup quarterbacks. A&M is known about backup quarterbacks and third-string quarterbacks the last few years.
Gotta have them, man.
Yep. Thank you so much, sir.
You bet.
Appreciate you. When we come back, an open segment, let's see if Matthew Dawson can give us some updates on Greg Sankey. But right now, we're talking about if you have arthritic joint pain keeping you from doing what you love to do, you need to call our good friends at QC Kinetics. Bone-on-bone pain in your knees, your hips, your backs, or your shoulders. They're exciting new cellular therapies that QC Kinetics can bring you and bring you lasting pain relief. QC Kinetics is helping patients just like you every single day. I know a lot of you in the Brazos Valley have checked them out. You're going to love what they're doing for you with advanced regenerative medicine. medicine. I'm talking cutting-edge treatments that accelerate your own body's healing properties, revitalizing your joints so you can move once again. They've helped so many people in the Brazos Valley and tens of thousands more around the country. So if you're living with chronic pain from arthritis injury, you need to know that steroids and surgery and pain pills are not your only options. No longer your only option. You have QC Kinetics now. They treat the pain, enhance your joints, restore your mobility, and give you long-term lasting relief with no downtime. Call the medical professionals at QC Kinetics right now to help you get your life back. Regenerative, restorative, cellular treatments are here for your achy joints. Call them up, 979-452-6000. QC Kinetics, 979-452-6000. That's 979-452-6000. Saludos a todos. Welcome back to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio in Dallas. Is it Dallas Fort Worth? Is it just Dallas? Just Dallas, right? Luke's a Dallas guy.
Yeah, Luke's the Dallas guy, so he says just Dallas, just Dallas.
Yeah. Luke, who joined us last night. Thanks for paying for dinner. Appreciate that, Luke. Appreciate that, all 8 of us. Let's go to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. So one of the parts of my gig that I don't love is that I can't hear some of the stuff going on during the show, right? So Greg Sankey has been speaking this morning. I assume he's still speaking. And Matthew Dawson has been writing notes, has been listening to his press conference, writing tweets down. And he's going to update us on a couple of the talking points here from Greg Sankey. What do you got for us, Mr. Dawson?
Well, I'll tell you, it's not just me. You got a wave of folks back there that are pretty dialed in right now. But I will say, Greg Sankey, he said some pretty good things. I mean, he talked about a partnership with Apple. He just announced it, that they're going to have basically real-time plays on the sidelines. So definite implications there on the football field. Just having real-time.
Explain that to me. Say that again. With Apple, real-time plays on the side?
They're going to have iPads on the sideline, and they're going to basically, it's just going to be in real time. You're going to be able to pull the play basically like that just happened. So team comes off on the sideline, they're going to be able to pull up that play like right away. So I'm not sure what they were doing before.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of teams, you see them like with the paper, the printout, like we're in 2024, guys. Like there should be a Microsoft Surface and an iPad on every sideline for every player. We got about a minute left, Matthew. What else do you have for us?
Well, I think the elephant in the room was kind of he'd been asked about, hey, look, have you been monitoring, what is going on with Florida State and Clemson in terms of their potential realignment? And, to summarize his message, it was, we're focused on our 16. He said that he's not a recruiter and he's not looking at it like that. But I think he did say that he has been monitoring the situation, though. So something keeps happening.
Awesome stuff. Okay, Matthew. Appreciate you, sir. When we come back on TexAgs Radio, you know what we're going to have. That's the truth. We might have the Craniac. We might have Liucci. We might have some randos. We might have a lot of people. I don't know, but when we get them, you'll hear them. It'll be next on TexAgs Radio. All right, we're back here on TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Billy told me he's going to be joining us here in about 5 or 6 minutes. But before that and during that, got the J-Boy with us, Jake Crain, who joins us here from Crain & Company on the Real Daily Wire. That's their Twitter handle. What's up, buddy?
Man, I always get so excited around this time of year, not just because coaches are here and the players are here, but we get to see all you guys, all the media guys. I mean, the changes we're having in this college football season are monumental. I don't think we'll ever see this amount of changes in 1 year when you look at the expansion of the playoff, when you look at just not the conference realignment, but the type of conference realignment that we're getting, even some of the rule changes in the game. So I'm so thrilled. And speaking of game, we got the NCAA college football game coming out later today. So it's a great time.
So I want to pay you a compliment. I remember the summer of 21 when I was transitioning from ABC television to TexAgs. You were my show prep. You had you were just, I forget how long you had been doing it, but you were kind of new to the game. And then we met at SEC Media Days and you were grinding. And with all your success, you have not changed. You worked the room, you worked your sources. You have built a really great empire, man. I'm proud of you.
Well, David, I appreciate it. And first off, I'm very blessed. You know, I love being able to do this. I can't believe they pay us to talk about this. But I always took, I coached college football for almost a decade, 7 years in Division I, and I tried to take that same work ethic and apply it to here, because all this happened by accident during COVID when I was coaching and everybody got sent home, the players and coaches. And so I want to take advantage of every opportunity. I want to keep growing. And I feel like, sports is a place where we can hate each other on the field, but it's a haven where we can really bring people together. And I love it. I love it.
Well, you're great at it. And by the way, we haven't really touched on it on the show because we're more of a football show, but I know that the Daily Wire has been so busy and the crazy news that happened over the weekend. I'm sure that you were telling me you get some alerts from it.
Yeah, it's and it's funny. People think, oh, you're at the Daily Wire, you must just believe all one thing. And we do the sports show there. We actually try and keep politics out of it, outside of men and women's sports, which I don't even think is political. I think that's common sense for that not to happen. But what I wanted to do when we decided to go to the Daily Wire was, look, deep down, I don't care who you voted for. Like, I really don't. I know it's important. I'm not saying it's not important, but I want to have a sports show where everybody can come together and we can have dissent about sports. And it's not as tribal as everything else is, because, oh, I believe in this side of the aisle, I believe in that side of the aisle. And I think we've continued to do that. So that was really my main goal. And so I always tell people, look, I'm not going to tell you what we need to do on immigration or any of that stuff. I just want to know what we're going to do to stop somebody on 4th and goal from the 31.
So is A&M going to be able to stop people on 4th and 31?
Man, I tell you what, Dave, a couple things. When Mike Elko got the job, the first thing that came to my mind was we have a sample size of him being a head coach, what he did at Duke, which I thought he did an incredible job. You talk about getting the most out of each individual player. I think Mike Elko is one of the best rising young coaches of being able to get all the juice out of the squeeze. The second thing is, what you're not hearing about A&M? Anything really. On the football side, baseball, obviously. And I think that's exactly how he wants it. There's no tit for tat with other head coaches. There's no prima donna problems because all these recruits are here. You know what they're doing? They're talking about blocking and tackling. They're talking about making the right reads. They're talking about understanding what to do when you're in split coverage, what to do if you get formation of the boundary, and being a good fundamental football player. And I think what makes A&M, and I've said this to you, I've said this to Billy, when I think about A&M, and I grew up in SEC country, right? And I know A&M hadn't been in the SEC as long as some of these other teams. But when I think about A&M, I don't think about prima donna, flash, and sizzle.
Nope.
I think about somebody that's going to take you behind the bar, and if you want to throw them, we'll throw them. And I think about the 12th man. Think about the wrecking crew. Think about the Junction Boys. To me, Texas A&M, their identity is we're going to line up and we're going to run it through your teeth. We're going to stop you on defense, and we're not going to be flashy. We're not going to sit here and point, laugh, and do all this other stuff and make it about an individual. We're going to do what we have to do as a team. And that, to me, is what the 12th man is. So I think Mike Elko is a perfect fit for what A&M wants to be, who they want to be. And look, A&M's got all the resources to keep recruiting well. I'm telling you right now, those that make the 8-4 jokes and all this stuff with Mike Elko, I think Texas A&M is in a better position now than they have been the last 5 years. I really believe that.
And that's incredible considering the 9-1 season that some people look at as like, did they really go 9-1? That's a COVID year.
Everybody had COVID, though.
Everybody had COVID. Absolutely. So when you look at A&M, and I don't want to make this about Jimbo, but just why do you think they haven't had sustained success?
Well, it's typically multiple things, right? It's never one thing. When you look at even pre-Jimbo, they weren't a very balanced football team. Offensively, they could light it up with Johnny Manziel, Mike Evans. They were winning games, but they could only win games in certain ways. When Jimbo comes in, I feel like there was a little bit of what happened with Gus Malzahn at Auburn, right? You stop evolving at a certain point. And if you're not evolving, you're dissolving. And now you look at Gus back at UCF, has kind of turned back into his old self. I think Jimbo never really pushed the envelope schematically. He had one way he wanted to do it. He was going to do it his way. It worked at Florida State. They won a national championship with Jameis Winston. But then you come over to Texas A&M and everybody else is evolving. Nick Saban complained more about hurry up, no huddle than anybody ever. What did he do? He realized they're not going to change it, so I'm going to go be the best at it.
Right.
Jimbo, I don't think ever made that. It's not that Texas A&M didn't have good players, but it felt like he never evolved. And that when you look at the roster and the way it was put together, I don't think the evaluation process off the field and from a mental standpoint in recruiting was very good. I think they just turned the tape on, said, this player's really, really good. Let's go get him. How's he going to fit in our locker room? How's he going to fit in our culture? I don't think they really looked at that. They just said, hey, how many stars can we get that'll be better than Alabama? And that's not how you build a team in the ultimate team sport, which is football. So, and look, Jimbo Fisher was best friends with my father. My grandmother bought a car from Jimbo Fisher.
Wow.
When he was coaching at Auburn. So I love that family and they've been great to us. But at the end of the day, if I want to make everybody happy, I'd sell ice cream for a living. He wasn't getting it done and he didn't evolve. And I think Mike Elko is kind of a blend of all of that into one. So that's what I'm excited to see. I think A&M has a chance over the next 3 to 4 years to really push the envelope and maybe break some new ground here at the end of the season.
But for 2024 specifically, what is their ceiling? What's the low point?
Well, I'm big on Connor Wegman. Losing Evan hurts, but I think A&M's got good enough players to where if they do play discipline, if they play the type of football that Mike Elko constitutes, right? We're not going to take any crazy chances. We're going to be smart. We will do some things to push the envelope in some points, but we're going to tackle and hold you to field goals in the red zone. I think, and again, people make 8-4 jokes. I think 8-4 would be a good year this year.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a good year with them. I think the ceiling's probably 9-3. But I tell you what, if it's the right 8-4 in that last game of the season on November 30th in Kyle Field against, big bad Texas, who just took your baseball coach, you want to get off to a good footing, go win that one. And I think they could possibly ruin Texas season at the end of the year if it goes down like that.
I think so as well. You brought up Evan Stewart, and yeah, it's a huge loss, especially since there's so much unproven talent on the wide receiver room for Texas A&M. When you look at his numbers, he didn't do much at A&M. Now, part of it is because the offense was prehistoric. The other part was he sometimes played, sometimes didn't, and they didn't know how to use him the right way. I think he'll be great at Oregon, but it is a loss, but I don't know how much it stings.
Yeah. Well, they call it trimming the fat, right?
Yeah.
A little bit. And sometimes that has to happen. There has to be subtraction for there to be addition. And I think the thing with Evan Stewart, the consistency on the field and even availability on the field wasn't there. But I think that was kind of one of those situations where it's probably good for both parties to move on.
Yep.
I think you can put some of that blame on A&M. I think you can put some of it on Evan. And again, in Oregon's offense, they're just going to snap the ball and throw it right to him. There's no secret about that. But I do think A&M has, even though they're unproven, they do have some weapons around Connor, and Connor can make you a lot better, a lot quicker. But you don't have to have guys that go out there and are going to be first-round NFL draft picks everywhere.
Right.
Now, you need good players. I'm not saying that. Everybody knows that. But you need guys that are going to go out there and do what they're supposed to do. And even if you're good enough to be a decoy, go be the best decoy that you possibly could be. So, again, it goes back to where we started, getting every inch out of every player possible. I think that's Mike Elko's recipe. I think that's his forte. And that's what I'm excited to see. And, again, you're not hearing any outside noise. They're talking about the fundamentals, meeting. That's how you win football games.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's talk about some of the other teams that are talking today. LSU is a team that I look at their schedule, and I think they should win a lot of games. I also look at LSU and what they've lost, and I don't think they're going to be the same team they were last year. Where are you on them?
Well, I always say balance keeps you on the beam in this game, and the teams that win the most ways. And LSU, it's funny. I never thought I'd be living in a world, and I think Texas A&M fans will feel this at a very deep level, where I'm questioning if LSU is good enough on defense.
Mm-hmm.
That
2 years in a row.
It's 2 years in a row. It feels like LSU and Ole Miss have swapped places.
Yep.
Used to be this thing about Ole Miss. Well, we know they're going to score, but can they stop anybody? Well, now I'm looking at Ole Miss on defense. I'm like, this is a balanced team. I'm looking at LSU, and I like Blake Baker. I think he's going to do what needs to be done, and they have talent. I mean, either put Harold Perkins in the box, and he sees it good enough to let him play in the box, or he doesn't see it well enough, take him outside the box, let him rush the passer and play man coverage. Like at some point, I think Blake is going to simplify this thing even more than what they did. But we go back to balance. I don't think offensively, even though you can make the argument LSU is the best offensive line in the country, that LSU's offense will be as good as it was last year. That is an unfair ask with what Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors and the rest of those aliens running around did last year. But they don't have to be. The defense just has to be better. Because when you look at LSU, and I don't know if we're on video or not, but the offense was here, the defense was here. Well, if the offense goes down here and the defense goes down here, that's pretty damn balanced to me. So at the end of the day, I think LSU could actually be a better team. They may not have the Heisman winning quarterback. And by the way, Nussmeier, I think he has a chance to be special player as well. There's a lot of young quarterbacks in the league that could be really good. But the balanced team is a better team, right? And I think LSU has a chance to do that. But until I see that defense, make that adjustment and start playing like LSU again, again, it's trust but verify. I like Blake a lot, but it's trust but verify.
I asked Chris Lowe this, I'll ask you. So Connor Wigman, I feel like people know he's really good, but they still put him behind a lot of these younger quarterbacks that haven't played as much as Connor. I mean, Connor's 19-3 touchdowns to interception ratio. Nussmeier's ranked ahead of him in a lot of polls. Nico is as well. Where do you kind of put Connor in the pecking order?
Well, it's funny. Everybody gets excited about the new flashy young players. What Connor Wegman does isn't sexy, but it's not supposed to be sexy. Right. You know what Connor Wegman does? He makes the right decision. If I had to pick somebody on A&M to go do my taxes, I would go straight to Connor Wegman because there's no extra fluff. Is he going to go out there and make the crazy play where he breaks 3 tackles and throws the post for a touchdown? Probably not, but he's going to make the right decision. He's going to throw the ball away when he needs to throw the ball away. He's going to have a good completion percentage. He's going to throw the check down when he has to throw the check down. And I think that style of play, again, it wins games. It may not be the most fun thing to watch, right? But your job as a quarterback is to manage the game. That's why when people use the term game manager for quarterbacks, it's the worst term, I think, in sports, because if you're not managing the game, I don't care if you're Michael Vick, if you're Connor Wegman, or if you're Icebox from Little Giants, like, you can't play the position. That's like saying, oh, well, he's just a game manager as a pitcher. Well, yeah, duh. He's got to manage the game. So I think Connor, again, and it almost lines up. Connor Wegman, not super sexy, not super flashy, but it works. Mike Elko, not super outspoken, not super flashy, not super sexy, but it works. A&M overall, I think that is the recipe for them to have success. And I think that's why, because he's not running around doing crazy stuff. He's just running around making good decisions.
What about the future of the SEC and adding teams? You hear about the Big 12 potentially adding a couple teams here. What's going to happen with the ACC? Where do you see the SEC go here in the next 2 years? What's going to happen with the Big 10?
Well, here's what I do know. Every time we've talked about a conference being in trouble or there's been whispers, it's always come to fruition, right? Oh, hey, Texas and Oklahoma may go to the SEC. You heard whispers. All of a sudden, boom, it dropped. Hey, the Pac-12 may be shutting down. There's whispers of that. Boom, it happens. Well, we've had the first whisper about the ACC, and typically a whisper turns into a yell at some point. So what I think is going to happen is we're going to a Super League, two conference Super League, and they may be named ESPN and Fox. I don't know. Heck, Yormark's trying to sell the name of rights for the Big 12 right now.
Right.
So I think we're heading that way, and I think that's actually going to be good to have a Power 5 breakaway, because I think we can rewrite the rules to where if you sign a letter of intent to play for a Power 5 team in this new Super League, you have to abide by this. This is how it's going to work. I think that's the only way we can structure it. The big question is what would happen with the Big 12. I think eventually it will dissolve into one of those 2 Super Leagues, or one big Super League with 2 divisions, however you want to look at it. So I think that's where we're heading. I think the ACC's days are numbered. But I've always said, I'm not a lawyer, not smart enough to be one, but I would think if I'm in a media rights dispute, it would be a lot easier for me to leave the ACC to go to the SEC, because both of the media rights companies are ESPN, or perhaps the Big 12 because it's split between Fox and ESPN. Florida State and Clemson to the Big 10. I mean, now you're going to try and leave the ESPN media rights deal to go to a Fox media. I mean, that's rival. That's not going to happen. Deal with the same lawyers and get it done. So I think the ACC's days are numbered because the whisper's out now.
So when you say numbered, is that here in the next couple of years, like the Pac-12?
I would say within the next 3 years, I think the ACC will be done. It'll, and again, like the Pac-2, that's not a real thing with Washington State and Oregon State. My biggest question is when this Power 5 breakaway happens. I think there's some teams that are in Power 5 that need to be Group of 5. I think there's some teams that are Group of 5 that need to be Power 5. I don't think enough people are talking about that. Look at Memphis. Look at Boise State.
Right.
Look at Fresno State. Hell, look at Tulane. You mean to tell me like that Boise's not as popular as Wake Forest?
Right.
Or Boston College? Or to be honest with you, how long is Vanderbilt going to be in here? There's one reason Vanderbilt's in the SEC. So we can point and say, look, we care about school. Well, now we break away, you're paying the players. Like none of that matters anymore. So, at what point are we going to see that? I don't think enough people are talking about that.
Could you see a scenario where Vanderbilt's pushed out?
Yeah.
You can.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Again, what does Vanderbilt bring to the table? I mean, that's look, baseball, they're typically pretty good. We know that. Don't have a softball team, right? I mean, golf, they're typically pretty good. That's where it doesn't make any money. Football, I mean, they're getting what, $60 million a year to do $2 million worth of profit, maybe. So I just don't see a sustainable world. And I know they're a founding member, and that's great. That's fantastic. But like at the end of the day, this is a money play. I would not be shocked. I think Memphis would be better in the SEC than Vanderbilt would, and I don't think that's a crazy thing to say.
Don't you think, though, and maybe not Vanderbilt level, but you need teams that you can beat up on? Because if everybody you're bringing in are these top teams, right, then those top teams become the lower teams at some point.
It depends on who you are.
Yeah.
If you're the head coach of one of these teams, yes, you love being able to bring in teams to beat up on. But if you're trying to maximize profit, if you're trying to maximize matchup, if you're trying to put your best foot forward from a strength of schedule standpoint, the way Greg Sankey views it is going to be a lot different than the way that Jeff Levy views it. So I think the beauty's in the eye of the beholder there. Me, as a fan, I want all the best teams to play each other. I think that's fantastic. Where I do get worried about, though, and not to get off base here, is the expansion of the playoff past 12. Now I think you start eating into the regular season.
Right.
That's what scares me, because and it's not saying it's a bad thing, we've pigeonholed ourselves into player safety so much that if you're going to care about player safety and all these things with concussions, you're going to add more playoff games and keep 12 regular season games. I think the minute we go to a 16-team playoff, they're going to take a regular season game away and go, hey, we played 11 regular season games forever. But on that same token, you put all these great teams in one conference, there's never a bad game.
Yeah.
Like we don't lose the Clemson versus Georgia, and the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl Classic milkshake kickoff, whatever the heck it is. So as a fan and as a lover of the sport and as somebody that covers it, I want all the good games. As a coach, no. I always had 3 rules if I was ever going to be a head coach. Talking about non-conference scheduling. I'm never scheduling a triple option team. Takes too much time to work on. It's not worth the headache.
Right.
I'm never scheduling a school that's based on a religion. Nobody fights harder for longer than those guys. And number 3, I'm never playing a quote-unquote neutral site game in somebody else's state, like playing LSU in New Orleans in a neutral site game.
Right.
So, the coach's view and the commissioner's view and the fans' view is totally different.
Hey, you brought up something I just want to end with this. I think we as fans and analysts have to look at college football differently, the way we look at the UFC and boxing. What I mean by that is, in boxing, your record is what matters, right? 33-1, right?
Yeah.
You've got to be undefeated to be the best. In the UFC, you got to get the best matchups. And it doesn't matter if you have 4 or 5 losses on your year. We want to see the best matchups. And that's how we determine who the best is, how you did overall. Your thoughts on that as we start going to this bigger conferences?
Yeah, to me, whatever the formula is, I just want it to be concrete. Like there needs to be some, and again, I'm not saying no eye test. That an eye test needs to be part of the formula, but it doesn't need to be 75% of the formula. What I find interesting, and again, the more the playoff expands, the lower the guidelines are going to be to make the playoff.
Yep.
So if we're going to go past 12, which I hope we don't, which I'm sure we will, whatever the guidelines are, let's make them clear across the board. To me, strength of schedule's got to matter, but I think that takes care of itself with where we're going. Who you beat, when you beat them, and where you beat them, it has to matter. Where you start getting the gray areas, what we had happen last year. Starting quarterback coach now. But to me, again, if we're going to sit here and say that football is the ultimate team sport, if we're going to sit here and say it's winning that matters, how do you keep an undefeated team like Florida State out of the college football playoff because of an injury? I don't know if they're going to ever do that again, because they could have got away. They knew they could get away with it last year because we were moving to a 12 team. I hope going forward that that's not part of the calculus. It's an eye test, and it's what you have done. And there's at least some guidelines. College basketball, a team doesn't make the NCAA tournament. At least there's some guidelines to where, okay, this is why they didn't, even if they have a good argument to be in there. So I just hope whatever it is, it's uniform.
Jake, thank you, brother.
Hey, you're the best, man.
I appreciate you very much.
Yes,
we'll talk to you soon. Thank you. Jake Crain here on TexAgs Radio. We'll hit a break. I think Billy was here for a moment and he left, and he'll be back. We'll see what happens with Billy. Hey, shout out to Holly at Costa Vida. She's an Aggie. She loves the community, but she just celebrated 4 years yesterday, Sunday, July the 14th. So props to Holly there. 4 years. The Coast-iversary was popping from what I hear. You just need to go there to get your fresh Mex on, right? If you like fresh Mexican food done the right way, try those quesadillas. Like I had some really good quesadillas last night here in the Metroplex. I'm telling you though, you go to Costa Villa, you're gonna love the quesadillas there. You're gonna love the tortilla soup. You're gonna love everything that they have out there. They take great care of everybody who comes in from TexAgs. Just tell Holly or whomever, hey, yeah, we listen to TexAgs. We love here the Baja-inspired Mexican restaurant. If you use that entire line, I'm telling you, she's going to give you a high five. That's what she does. Ultimate fresh Mex made exactly the way you love it. Fresh and scratch made where you can taste the difference at Costa Vida where every ingredient matters. You know the menu. I've told you many times. A couple of signature dishes to consider. Sweet pork quesadillas. If Dalton's still listening, he loves to say sweet pork quesadillas. Check it out. It's Costa Vida in South College Station. Aggie owned and operated. 4501 Mills Park Circle in College Station. Costa Vida. 4501 Mills Park Circle in South College Station. Check it out.
And Mincy.
All right, we're back here on TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers here in the Rollo Insurance Studio of Dallas for SEC Media Days. Billy's with us. T-Bob is with us. What's up, man?
Oh, Dave, Billy, what's up, guys?
How you been?
Doing very well. LSU Day, which is fun. I wore a suit for the first time in my life at SEC Media Days.
Are you
not
gonna go
to brag?
When we go to dinner tonight, that next button needs to come down.
I had it down earlier, and then I thought it looked like a little better up. But what do you like? You think you like?
I think
right
that's
there?
better. You know,
I'm a custom little comic book lining on the inside.
What, any particular comic book?
No, it's just kind of a generic.
Where's that from? Where's that?
Shout out Pierce Bespoke, dude. My homies. It's a Louisiana suit company that I got in touch with. And to full disclosure, they gave me this, but I love this so much. I went and bought a tux from them to officiate my brother's wedding. And in true Alabama style, I have now married my sister and my brother.
Wow.
I would love to hear you officiate a wedding.
I know.
That would have been something, I'm sure.
It's a lot of pressure, but it's a lot of fun. But technically, guys, I'm an ordained minister. Okay.
Sure.
So I can marry, bury, and baptize. So if any of y'all feel like you have strayed from the light, come find me and I can splash some tequila on your forehead and we'll get you right back where you need to be with God and with myself.
You might need to do that to Doring tonight at dinner.
I think Doring strayed so far it might take entire fist of tequila. I don't know if a splash is gonna solve CD's
an actual
problem
exorcism.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna have to tie him down to the bed. But again, I don't think he's any stranger to that either. You know, I think that's probably in his wheelhouse as well.
T-Bob, help me understand LSU, because when I look at them, I'm like, all right, they lost all this on offense.
Yeah.
They can't be as good. Then I go through their schedule. I'm like, I don't think they're going to lose for a while.
Kind of friendly schedule.
Yeah.
For being 10 of 12 Power 5 games, like, it's actually pretty damn friendly. Like, you get most of your hard tests at home except for at A&M. That's the one that everybody's all worried about.
Is that their toughest road game?
I believe so, yeah, because Alabama's at home, Ole Miss is at home. Yes, at A&M's the toughest road game. Yeah, I mean, so it's kind of one of those deals where, like, they did lose a lot, but they put about $10 million into changing the defensive staff up. So it's like, even if you still have some question marks in terms of the players, it will be better because it almost like, I mean, it couldn't be worse, really.
Yeah.
And look, like, the reason why, if I here's what I think. I think I look at that schedule. I think I see 10-2, but I also think I'm a naturally optimistic person, a sunshine pumper. So I kind of just do like a natural just bump down to 9-3.
Yeah.
And I think them, Tennessee, maybe Ole Miss at the top of this grouping, but them, Tennessee, Mizzou, Ole Miss, I think they're all in that exact same situation. You look at their schedule and it feels like they're all on the edge of 9-3, 10-2. And it's fascinating because the 10-2 teams will probably make the playoffs, whereas the 9-3 teams probably will not. And yeah, so whatever. So if you're saying, well, how does LSU get there? Pretty friendly schedule combined with what I do believe to be the best offensive line in the country. I think Nussmeier's going to be really good, the quarterback.
Yeah.
And except for, like, interior defensive line is a real Achilles heel. But even though there's a lot of unknown at some of the other defensive position groups, you at least have a grouping of talent that you're like, okay, if we throw all these guys against the wall, like, somebody pretty good will stick. You don't have that at the D line and the interior specifically, but everywhere else you're okay. So there's some reasons to be bullish. They can't lose that first game. They keep losing that first game.
Let's see. That's one you think they need to win.
I mean,
Caleb Williams.
I think it's the most important game of Brian Kelly's career at LSU.
Interesting.
And I don't even think it's particularly close. SC championship against Georgia, you knew you're going to lose that, right?
Yeah, that's important if you win it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Like that team didn't stand a chance that night. But because of the context of, look, LSU got their ass kicked by UCLA to start, back in the O days. And then am I missing one in there? I think they've lost. No, go back to Mississippi State in 2020.
That's right.
Came out of nowhere. They're the national champs. Mississippi State beats them. Then UCLA beats them. Then Brian Kelly takes over, and Florida State beats you. And it's got all the debacle with the special team stuff. And then Florida State, and granted, now we know there's no shame in losing those Florida State games, but they beat you again the next year. So LSU, these last few years have felt like you've been pursuing this beautiful woman or man, whatever you're into. And it's like, finally, she gives you the time today. Finally, you go on the day. You finally bring her or him back home. And then you just finish in like 2 seconds. And everything is just deflated out of you. All your confidence is sapped. all of this buildup where you finally, you thought this was going to be the thing that made you achieve self-actualization and you were going to be the person you always wanted to be. And instead you just looked in the mirror and you're like, you're pathetic.
Yeah.
And now nothing feels fun and everything feels awkward and bad. And you'll probably never see them again. And so that's like how
and she leaves and gets in the car and starts driving to Tuscaloosa.
And it's over. And it's over. And like the season's over before it even begins.
Yeah, no.
And they would have gone 10-2 the last 2 years had they won those games. So it's like, yes. And then you look at USC and LSU, both losing Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks, both having terrible defenses, remaking the entire staff. Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly were tied to each other when they were even in the coaching search. They used each other as smokescreen.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of fascinating narratives and a lot on the line for both of those coaches.
So go ahead. I'll
sorry.
say LSU and A&M to me are more similar than either fan base wants to admit since the Aggies joined the SEC. There was that amazing 2019 season, which I still say that's the best college football team I've seen.
Yeah.
And I've seen some great ones in the OU Big 12 era.
Yep.
The Nebraska Big 12 era.
Yep.
And obviously Bama and these SEC teams. Best team I've ever seen. But outside of that, LSU lives generally in that 9-3 world.
Yes.
And A&M lives generally in that 8-4 world.
Yep.
And both of them are kind of facing the same thing. Like you guys, LSU's got to get under Brian Kelly to 10-2, get in that playoff. And you mentioned what that USC and A&M, what those two games mean to it. The Aggies, I think, are the same way. Even though it's Elko's first year, can you win 9?
Bro, I am freaked out by the potential of A&M here. Because A&M to me has had, and this is all outside looking in. So, I apologize to any listeners who have different reads on the situation. Obviously,
this is why I love
I'm
this.
trying to read the room from the outside, right? But I feel like outside looking in, there's been a bit of a culture problem, a lot of flash, maybe not a lot of substance, maybe a lack of toughness. And so I get a bit freaked out then when I see a humble hire like a Mike Elko hire, and I don't mean humble as a pejorative, I mean humble in like that it wasn't just pursue the biggest name no matter what cost. Like, no, let's look at the resumes, who actually has the most solid resume.
Yep.
And you look when he was the D coordinator, I think the win percentage is over 700, dropped sub 5 when he leaves. He has success at Duke. I mean, Steve Spurrier is the only other coach that I've ever known that can have success at Duke.
Right.
So in the head coaching hire, you have a guy that we know is a good coach. It's a tough coach. It's going to bring a culture of toughness with him. I think through all the transfer portal stuff, there's been a natural culling of guys who don't actually want to be there or weren't maybe there for the right reasons. So the culture has almost a, it's almost like a self-cleaning mechanism, right? Where you kind of, the guys who don't really want to be there. Okay. You don't really want them, even though it's big names, we don't really need them anyway. So the guys who stay are the ones who give a damn. And even post transfers, you still have the 8th best roster from a pure talent standpoint in the entire country. We know about the home field advantage. Connor Wegman's really damn good and now very experienced and returning for another year. And then finally, this is just on a personal level for me, Tommy Moffitt's the best strength coach or the best coach flat out that I've ever had in my entire life. And if I know one thing about a Tommy Moffitt football team is they ain't gonna be soft. Like I can guarantee you that.
Well, and you
and
said
so we were going through the schedule the other day, dude. I could see A&M going 9 or 10 wins. I mean, I would be terrified if I was Notre Dame because A&M's playing with house money. They don't have a lot to lose.
Yeah.
Notre Dame has everything on the line, and they got to go down to College Station. And who knows Riley Leonard better than anyone? Mike Elko.
Yeah.
Like, what a massive opportunity week 1 for A&M to kind of assert themselves and be like, new era.
A&M, it's so interesting to start. Now, you and I, and we've talked, you went pretty extensively back. Did you have him like right after we hired Moffitt?
Yeah, so I think me and you, I can't remember, me and you definitely talked right after Moffitt was hired.
And that was, and like you said, a lot of it was everything you just said. Like part of that, a massive part of that culture shift is Tommy Moffitt. When I have A&M players come in, not only am I starting to really notice what they look like, but they are wired differently.
Yeah.
And
Bro,
every summer, the offseason.
I'm telling you, dude, it's crazy. Okay, so allow me, I want to hear all
the
allow me to
Moffitt
expound on Moffitt then, because first off, the resume speaks for itself. National championships everywhere has been yada yada. But also, if you talk about an X factor behind the LSU golden age, right?
Yeah.
The Saban and the 20 years there where LSU was really more relevant and better than they've ever been before. And when LSU, like, even when the on-field results started to struggle, why were they still putting so many guys in the NFL?
Yep.
Even though they didn't necessarily have the number one class every year, it's all Tommy Moffitt. Who do you spend the majority of your time with as a college football player? Your strength coach. The vast majority, you spend way more time with him than you will any position coach, head coach, anything. And what he achieves, and this is always what I view as, this is the thing, this is the pinnacle of the coaching player relationship, is if I do what this man is telling me, even if I don't think it's right or it sounds weird to me or I don't want to do it, do I have the trust that doing it is the best thing for me? Because sometimes you'll have a coach that you kind of think's an idiot or you don't believe in, and you're like, that's dumb. If you ever felt that with, like, I didn't give a damn what Tommy Moffitt told me to do. I knew if I did it that it was going to make me better, even if it sounded like I was, it was too hard or it didn't make sense, or even just like I didn't think I could do it.
Yeah.
And then he pushes you and helps you. I would take a bullet for that man. That is my favorite coach I've ever had, which is why it's so heartbreaking now to see him go to the Aggies. I want to say one of his kids like, Dad, I'm not cheering for A&M. Okay. You just got to know that. But I was also very happy for him because, I mean, that man, that's just such a home run hire, dude. It's crazy.
Did you know he was going to be back or did you think, man,
I thought
the job's going to have to be too perfect?
I thought he was going to be done, but then I did hear some rumblings that, you know how these guys are wired, dude.
Yeah.
You know how these coaches are wired. They're not like normal humans. They don't like downtime.
Mm-hmm.
And, he did all the hunting and fishing and he got to go to all of his kids' games and everything. But I was kind of hearing rumblings that he was yearning for another opportunity. But what's crazy is I don't think there could have been a better opportunity than how this all worked out with A&M. Because look, so I was talking to somebody the other day who was who was chatting with him, and he said allegedly, this is secondhand quotes. So this is not like a fishing board,
right?
But he said this might be the best linebacker group from a raw physical standpoint he's ever coached.
Wow,
interesting.
He just said, he's coached some dogs,
yeah.
But he said they just got some freaks.
Oh,
some
that'll excite Aggies because that is one of the question mark positions, just from an experience standpoint. But
apparently, y'all got some.
They got a couple in the portal,
some monsters in there in
the
position group.
My question before we let you run here about LSU.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, how good is that tackle y'all's? It's down here, and he's wearing number 7.
Well, so yeah, like that's his. It's like Lloyd Cushenberry and that 19 team was like number 18.
Yeah.
You can't legally do it on the field, but at LSU, 7 is given to like the best playmaker.
Yeah.
And that all stems from like Tyrann Mathieu and Pat Peterson. And 18 is given to kind of like, your
be like the Aggie Heart Award.
Yeah. It's like, this is the guy that you want to emulate to be, right? And that started by the greats like Matt Mock, Jacob Hester, all those guys. But okay, this is how good Will Campbell is. The Athletic has him number 1 on their NFL big board for the draft. Number 1 overall. He's not even 21, guys.
Oh, no.
He won't be 21 until after the season. And at that position, I've never seen that before. I've never seen a tackle, an offensive lineman come in and in 3 years be the number 1 rated player like that. It makes no sense to me.
Well, it's funny because no, not to quite that level, but close was Jake Matthews and Luke Jokel. They came in, and Jokel didn't have the NFL career, but remember, he was a number 2 pick.
Were they 3-year guys?
Yeah, they were.
Wow.
Jake ended up staying 4.
Okay.
Jake came back, and it was pre-NIL, which I don't know how much he would have made in and out. But, yeah, they were both. So, number 2 pick.
How much did you pay him, Billy? How much did you pay him? Admit it.
To keep him with broken TexAgs. I think we gave him a free lunch. He's like, sure. I think Bruce Matthews said, you're staying 1 more year.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Legend.
Campbell is from day one. That's who I've compared him to. I said, dude, this guy, just from looking at it from an A&M standpoint. And guess what? They also both did early in their careers. They blocked for a Heisman Trophy winner.
Yep.
And were a big part of the reason.
Bro,
why.
he had his first start as a true freshman was against Jared Verse.
Yeah, that's right.
What? And and he got beat a couple times that game. And so in some people's minds, I think that immediately started him like, oh, but he ain't been beat since.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, he's
him and then Emory Jones gets overshadowed. The right tackle is also incredible, dude. Miles Frazier, Garrett Dellinger. There's only one new face in that offensive line, and it's a freshman, DJ Chester, who they're really, really bullish on. And I've watched him play. He came in like the Mizzou game at the very end, thrown in as a freshman last year, and I thought really acquitted himself quite well. So Will Campbell's the leader of that group, but he
Brad
is not.
Davis
I guess he's not overhyped, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
And
no.
Brad Davis is he's the key behind, I think, the rise of O-line. And it's so funny how some head coaches have affinities for positions. And for whatever reason, Kelly's good with developing O-linemen and tight ends. Now he just has to get a little more of that, like, can he tap into the classic LSU pipeline, which is actually like DBs and D linemen?
Yeah,
that's what they got to do if they want to achieve the goals that he wants to.
And my final question on LSU and then close out. We know, to me, Nuss is like, he's been really impressive in limited.
Yes.
He, to me, when I'm looking at it, is definitely one of the X factors, and everybody here will probably want to talk about that. But I'm going to ask you, if not him, who is a guy that comes to mind for you as a guy that can really swing what this season looks like on either side of the ball?
I think it's I think we keep it chalky and we go to another one of the players that's here, and I say Harold Perkins.
Yeah.
And it's only because 2 years ago, Harold Perkins had an impact that was hard to overstate, in that he literally won you like 2 SEC games. Like you would not have won them if not for him.
Yeah.
And last year, it's kind of fascinating in that everybody thinks he had a really bad year. He kind of disappeared. And I agree. Like it was kind of sad to watch this otherworldly playmaker just kind of be shuttled to the side, but it gets a bit weird when you look up and you're like, oh, wow, he had 15 TFLs and 5.5 sacks. Like for most players, that would be like, a great year, but it just shows you the level of talent expectation there. Well, now you combine him with Blake Baker, you put him on the inside, and Blake Baker, this is some like deep LSU lore here, so stick with me. Damone Clark was an inside linebacker playing for Bo Pelini in 2020. It was some of the worst linebacker play I've ever seen in my life. I mean, we were ripping on that group.
Who was the guy from like North Dakota or?
They
look great, is what I'm saying.
Damone Clark physically was a specimen. Worst linebacker I'd maybe ever seen. We're ripping on him all year. Blake Baker comes in the next year. Damone Clark ends up with 136 tackles, 15.5 TFLs, 6.5 sacks, like 3 forced fumbles. It was like it was a different guy.
Yeah.
It was a completely different guy. So now Baker's attempting to do that with Perk. And Perk might even have a higher starting base maybe than even Damone had. So like that becomes very, very exciting in terms of potential. And we talked to Baker the other day, and we were talking about Clark. I was asking about him, and he went out of his way to make that connection on his own.
Okay.
To be like, I'm seeing a lot of the same things out of Perk right now that I saw out of Damone when I started working with him and kind of trying to explain to him how we're going to do this. So we'll see. I mean, Blake's making $2.5 million a year. Pretty good
going rate these days. I remember they were making like 250. I don't know what 2.5 that's called, but it's no longer
5, dude. Coordinator. I mean, Bo Davis is making $1 million. No, 1.5, I think. To be, or is it? Yeah, I can't remember. Is it 1. It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, they spent like $10 million redoing the defensive staff.
Aggie fans will be really pissed to know that, not anymore, but Bo Davis. I mean, Bo Davis. You said Bo Davis. Brad Davis.
Yeah.
Was a guy that Jimbo was trying to hire from Arkansas when they.
I'm so happy that we got him, dude. That's been one of
the
big pickup, dude. Oh my God, dude.
T-Bob, man, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Love y'all.
Look good in the suit, man.
Thank you. I know. I feel like I do when I dress up to like cosplay as like a dwarf or something. It's like the same type feeling.
I would say wear the dwarf outfit to dinner tonight. I don't want to be underdressed.
All right, we got
boys.
All right, we'll see you. We'll hit a break here. We'll come back to TexAgs Radio.
Check. Hey, we're back. TexAgs
He looks
Radio.
very nervous walking over here.
Because it's a long walk to the restroom, and I have 3 minutes.
Your nightmare scenario is me and T-Bob as far as breaks and stuff.
That segment started at 10:17. It is 10:50.
I didn't start at 10:17.
So we broke. So it started at 10:21. Yeah.
No, it didn't.
No. Okay. Nick, yes or no?
Check.
It did happen.
No,
it
what-
was.
you
It
look-
was worth it.
It was
though.
not
great.
10:21.
It was a long segment. but
Don't
it
you me fact check it, because I know, because when I was talking to him, it was 10:21. And I said, "Do you want to just start now?" And he goes,
If
"Sure."
we're off by
That
42
was-
seconds, maybe.
You're off by 2 minutes. But
All
go
right.
ahead. It was long. It was a
Hey.
long segment.
All right. We got to hit a break.
And this is a short one.
We'll be right back. TexAgs. Bye. Well, hello, everyone. Dallas SEC Media Days. David Nuño, Billy Liucci here for TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Billy, I didn't hear Sankey. I only got a little tidbit.
I didn't either because of this. So
you've been doing the rounds.
I'm going to go today to the room and watch videos of Sankey, Brian Kelly. I got to do a better job of scheduling my radio appearance. Today was not a good 10 o'clock day. I'm gonna have to start doing 9 with me.
Okay.
Based on what I'm seeing on these schedules. But so we'll talk more, I guess, tomorrow about what Commissioner Sankey said. He said it's a 3-minute segment right here. According to T-Bob, you can accomplish a lot or nothing in 3 minutes.
I'm familiar with the topic.
So I don't think there's a lot to say other than I'm going to go listen to the rest of LSU. We've got Shane Beamer today.
Yeah, I like Shane.
We've got Lane Kiffin, who I know everybody's going to be excited to listen to, and obviously a tough week for him, the toughest of weeks. So thoughts and prayers to the Kiffin family, by the way, as we'll be talking tomorrow about other teams, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see those two today. And I always like listening to Clark Lee. I think he's a ball coach, man, and a good dude. And I'd love to see him get Vandy. They are the fourth team today, aren't they?
Yep. Somewhat relevant.
I'm getting confused by 16 now. It feels like everything's gotten more condensed and crammed in just by adding 2 teams, because you'd have some of those days where it was only 3 teams.
Yep.
And now it's like just go time.
We got about 30 seconds. I'll say this, and tomorrow we'll touch more on it. But I think the national media quietly optimistic about A&M.
I think they're more optimistic than Aggies are.
Yeah.
And Aggies have worked themselves into some optimism, and I believe rightfully so. And I know where I've sat, where it's like the ceiling is here, but it's like, do they get there? But around the SEC, the more I've talked to a lot of people this morning, that seems to be kind of a general theme.
Thank you, Billy. Keep it with TexAgs.com, as we'll have interviews posted throughout the day. We'll see you mañana.